We're chatting competitive play with our special guest ASB from the War Dollies podcast today. And then Josh, Andrew and I run through the latest morale and psychology update from the Old World Almanac. Enjoy. Welcome to the Old World Fanatics, your Warhammer Fantasy podcast to quench your hobby thirst for all things the Old World. And man, it is getting close. I'm one of your hosts, Gomo. I'm joined again by Andrew and Josh. How are we, guys?
Hey, Gomo. Hey, Josh.
Pretty excited.
How you guys going?
Well, excited to get into some more articles.
Yeah. A bit
See
of
what it's like.
maybe a bit of a smaller one today, but we're not sure. It depends. There's a few questions still.
I haven't looked at it yet. I'm excited
really?
to see what it looks like.
First impression, is it?
No. I was just trying to build some theatre, guys. And
Yeah. He's actually wrote a
Damn it,
thesis
Josh!
about
What? You had one thing to do. What is this?
We've got obviously that's going to be one of our topics, so we're going to get straight into that in a minute. Actually, we're going to do this. I guess because we're doing these rules updates and that's the only news, we just decided we're going to skip hobby and news this week. There's no news. Hobby, we're probably just going to say the same stuff we've been doing, so we might just spread that out a bit. And we've got a pretty good maybe
let it build into a massive hobby section next week.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, don't put pressure on me, guys. Don't put pressure on me.
He's still selling everything, so
I am.
I'm
down to 22 items.
Oh, okay.
No, not items. 22 lots out of.
Wasn't it 100 or something?
Yeah, it was.
Wow.
Have you posted the 80 something then, or just sold
most of them? No. Wow. I'm sending live.
Does the post office know you now?
6 or 7 packages. Yeah. Old mate.
Police are going to turn up going, what are you?
What is going on? No, I'm worried about the bloody ATO turning up and just like thinking I got some little side business going on.
Anyway, cool. Yeah, well, we'll chat about that hopefully next week. I've been doing some stuff too, but we can just jump past that. So we'll cover the morale and psychology phase, but then we also got ASB on from the War Dollies podcast to chat to us about what was it called? The competitive play, maybe, is the easiest way to describe the conversation we had with him.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, competitive play as opposed to power gaming. It's a slightly different way.
So for those who don't know, ASB, you can check out him and his mates podcast. I think it's mostly on Spotify and Podbean or something, but just search for War Dollies or the War Dollies, you'll find it. But after we chat Old World Almanac rules, we'll jump over to that, and that goes for maybe, is it nearly 2 hours? I can't remember.
Yeah, it went for a while.
Yeah. If you're really keen, his most recent episode was him and me talking for 4 hours about Castle Assault.
Josh loved it. He loved every minute.
That's how Josh is a professional podcaster with the length of episodes he ends up on.
That's ridiculous.
So that's going to be the episode today. And then we're going to skip the other stuff, and then just a couple of shout outs at the end, and that'll be the episode. So hopefully that's some good content for the week for people painting, driving, whatever you're doing out there at the moment. So why don't we just get straight into it then, into the morale and psychology, or what is it? Get in the right headspace.
Yep.
Who wants to kick the article off?
I'll do the first bit, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Like the morale bit?
The morale bit, yeah.
Sure.
Cool. So
psychology.
So it's basically, at the start there's a bit of fluff. So like always. So it's talking about the first step in the morale, which is going to be your break test, which we've already gone through, and then basically how good you pass the break test or with modifiers sort of gives you your 3 outcomes, which was going to be break and flee, fall back in good order, and give ground, which obviously we didn't really know exactly what those meant. So at least it's given us a bit of a rundown on what these actually mean. To a certain degree, they're not obviously highly detailed. So in the first case, the losing unit turns and runs in the opposite direction from whatever caused to flee. And whichever enemy unit had the stronger unit strength if it was multiple combats.
Cha-ching. That's a new thing, though.
Yeah, so that's good. You can't pick and choose.
Yeah.
which unit you want. So if you're
Well,
if you've got
I'm
your
saying
two
it's the
units,
first time they've mentioned unit strength because we thought there wasn't going to be unit strength.
yeah. So yeah, obviously, which is they didn't talk about that when it came to combat res. So
no, it's not. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
So
it's
there's
a
no
weird thing.
outnumbering or anything. So that's why we thought, oh, there mustn't be unit strength.
but then it's I'm not sure. Maybe it is there, and they just
maybe
never know.
Maybe like they had that last type thing, which was like and other things that might affect combat or something. You know,
Yeah.
So it was a bit open ended.
Yeah. So I mean,
irritatingly vague.
I really want to know if this is deliberate and they spend hours writing these paragraphs to just confuse everyone, or they just like have no idea the type of things people actually want to know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk to them about that one day. Not that I'm not appreciative of them writing this stuff. It's awesome. It's just
it is. It is good, and they've been quite timely with their releases, which is good. Just keep trickling it out. So yeah, as always, they run 2d6 pivoting only to avoid impassable terrain.
Is that different? Like it's pretty much an 8th edition flea by the sound of it, but I can't remember. You just bumped through in 8th, didn't you?
Yeah. So I think you need a diagram here on like how that's going to work.
I do hope they don't do it as vague as 6th though, where it's like, just wander around and do this and try and go this
just
way.
Mosey on around. Yeah.
Take a walk on the way to the battlefield edge.
So yeah, obviously if it crosses any part of the battlefield edge, it's destroyed as normal. If the enemy gives chase and rolls higher than the 2d6 that you rolled to make contact.
Oh, no, high enough. Unit. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I thought you said high. I was like, hang on, do you have to get more? But no, it's high.
Oh, yeah, high enough to make contact. So that I was a little bit unsure about that because I'm like, to me, if you roll the same 2d6, then it's destroyed. It's not making contact.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, I think.
Because what happens if you pop through another unit? Surely,
I don't think that. I think it. Well, I don't know. Hopefully it doesn't. I
think it's just poorly written. I think you're right. If they catch them, they catch them. It's just I feel like they haven't written it.
I hope so. I hope you can't just pop through your own unit and you can't get caught.
Yeah, and get away.
Yeah.
Just that point. With 8th edition, I looked it up, and you pop through impassable terrain. You don't avoid it. You pop through it like you pop through an enemy unit, and then you take dangerous terrain checks.
Take DTs.
Yeah. And you do pop through enemy terrain, enemies here, and you do take damage.
Yeah.
You don't through friendly. It doesn't mention anything about panic and stuff, which I'm assuming it is probably there, but they're not going to go into that much detail here.
Fleeing through a panic.
Yeah, when you run
through.
Yeah.
But, sure, that's probably there somewhere.
Who knows?
I think that's good, but like, if you're not popping through it, then they can still charge you later on. Ross, if you pop through it, you kind of got away.
Yeah, maybe it was a deliberate. You might be right. It might be a deliberate thing, so you can't try and take charges where you can pop back through impassables and block the pursuer, because the pursuer probably wouldn't be able to pop through.
And then he's kind of blocked. Which
again, it feels like a bit of a mixture of 6th and 8th, isn't it? Because 8th was all about like logical, quality of life and was making things clear, but not very thematic potentially. Whereas this and 6th edition was just way too flat, like
it's just a bit vague. Yeah.
Whereas this is at least you pop through units. You still can't go through impassable terrain because that's physically impossible. So there's still got some vagueness there, but at least you're popping through units. I feel that's a good. I think they'll have some
pretty good. I think they're getting better at writing those diagrams and stuff to show you what would happen in those weird circumstances. So that'd be good.
Sorry, where are we? So if they run through an enemy unit, they take additional wounds as they go. So like your DT sort of style. If they run through a friendly unit, however, they're safe. I'm assuming that there's going to be panicky sort of stuff involved in that. And then, but that unit may now bear the brunt of the pursuer's charge. So to me, that's like obviously you're going to make contact with a new
pursued
unit.
into fresh,
Fresh. So in short, try not to break and flee, which is kind
just
of
some of the language. It's like the asterisk. Like, have you seen the asterisk that says "cross the battlefield edge, it is destroyed"? And you go, okay, what's the asterisk? You go all the way down. It's like, note that units can cross the edge of the field and remain in play in other circumstances, such as when performing a maneuver. I don't need to know the specifics of that. Like, that never. And I didn't read that about the battlefield edge and go, ooh, does that mean, someone moving next to the battlefield just blows up because they pivoted and they touched the edge of the battlefield? It's just weird, some of the stuff.
It's weird they put in the effort to clarify that and yet left so much other stuff.
That's why I'd love to just talk to them and go, you're doing it to just make us like crazy and
because I was reading again about the step up thing the other day. Look, in the 6th edition book, it says you remove casualties from the back rank in the same way that it does in that article. By the way, and I'm still absolutely none the wiser as to whether they step up or not. It's so annoying.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's a given yet. By any means.
But
anyway,
sorry. Yeah. So on the other hand, a unit that falls back in good order is still beating a hasty retreat, but they're not yet lost that fighting spirit. They can discard the lower of the 2 dice when they flee. So you're not going to be going back a hell of a lot, obviously a max of 6. And they automatically rally and reform at the end, ready to receive the charge of their pursuer or to hit back in the next turn. That is interesting because that surely, as like we were discussing before, there's got to be some negatives to that. Like you can't just, because that's kind of obviously the second worst thing. You're not breaking and running, but it's surely not just moving.
What's really funny if you got it probably doesn't really work. I'm just thinking like it's a multi-combat and you've got like a bit of a, you got a bit of a tar pit there and you've got a chariot unit that comes in, but for some reason you lose the combat and then in their turn, so then you fall back in good order, but they can't follow you because they're stuck on the tar pit. So then next turn you charge again with the chariots. So you're getting like these double charges. But you'd have to fail the combat in the first place, I guess. But I'm just wondering if there's some weird play, with that. And then there's things like automatically rally and reform, but okay, do I have to reform facing? Like, can I if I'm about to move, if it's my turn next, can I reform a different way and get the hell out of there? That type of thing. Yeah.
Do you guys reckon you're going to be able to charge? Because that's a huge thing. Like if you charge somebody and they can sort of just run back 5 inches and turn around and charge you back.
Well, they say automatically rally, and I'm assuming that happened. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Because is that happening in the strategy phase, and then you can't actually do that? Yeah.
It's just like if you're a cav unit, it's going to be really hard to break a high leadership and run them down. Like it's almost like if your Brett's going against like just say a dwarf ironbreaker or hammerer unit or something like that, like how are you going to kill me? Like as in like unless I roll super unlucky and I break and flee, most of the time I'm just going to be running back, 4 or 5
but
inches.
I guess like I'm assuming because we don't know, but like if I fall back, I can. Well, this is someone else, one of our popular listeners. What's his name? I've always forget his name. Gilthos said that the wording there is weird because it says you can. Where is it? They can discard the lower of the 2 dice. So the question is, do you have to discard the lower of the 2 dice, or you can just roll 2 dice and just go back as far as you can? But I'm assuming what's the pursuer rolling? They're probably rolling 2d6, or 3,
Yeah,
So
okay.
I think most of the time you're going to fall back and you're going to be in combat with them.
So you'll fall back and reform, and then they pursue straight into you basically if they want to.
Because they want to get charge bonuses again and stuff, I'd imagine.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting at the end of that sentence, or to hit back in the next turn, seems to imply that you wouldn't be able to charge if they hadn't pursued you or failed to catch you.
Yeah, no, you're right, actually. Yeah. Because, I mean, Yeah, I mean, it just says right there when they flee, they automatically rally and reform at the end. So yeah, you're definitely not doing that in the strategy phase. You're doing it right then. So it's a whole new mechanic there. So it's never been in any of the, at least none of the Warhammer fantasy editions, as far as I know.
Yeah. Well, so we'll definitely see, but there'd have to be something negative, like as in something really negative to it.
Well, yeah, we talked just pre-show, didn't we, Andrew? Like, we're wondering, is this indicative of a little bit more objective play focus as well? Because there's more. There's a lot that you basically can't have a normal combat. It's either they're running away or someone's moving. And so there's a lot more push and pull, which means if you're supposed to stay on a particular point within 3 inches of it or whatever, there's a lot more chance of and reason to charge in somewhere to try and push someone back, which would be pretty cool. And not just because you're not in that point where it's like, oh, everything's contested, so no one gets the objectives because everyone's just sitting there and you can't move them. So
that's true. It's a lot more dynamic in that regard.
Yeah. Have you guys played War Master where you push people back?
Yeah.
Is there anything similar to this, or is there any bonus in pushing? What's the?
It's a core part of the game. I must admit, it's been maybe 18 months since I last played a game, but I have played 5 or 6 of them. And when you win combat, however much you win by, they're pushed back so many centimeters. And then you can follow up and pursue, and the further you've pushed them back, the bigger the bonus you get in terms of the next combat round, in terms of how many dice attacks you roll. So if you push them back really far because you've won the combat by a large amount, you actually get quite a
it's almost
bonus.
Like you are routing them and you're just killing them as you go.
That's how it is, because you don't really flee like in the same. You don't break them, you get destroyed. That's how you knock them down. There is a bit of a risk reward there slightly, where if you only win by a small amount, you don't get a very big bonus at all. So that and sometimes you can sort of peter out of momentum, I suppose. Interestingly, with shooting as well in War Master, most of the shooting effects are pushbacks. Like that's actually the value of shooting in War Master.
Well,
it's more about controlling movement phase than doing any damage.
That's really a good point, because someone brought that up. Maybe it wasn't on this rule book, maybe it was last week's, I can't remember, but saying the exact thing that, at least volley fire, arch, volley fire, like, big units of bows we usually use to slow the enemy advance, not to actually kill a lot of people.
So,
that's what it's for, to break up the battle line, just to slow things down. It's just chaos.
But how good would that be, even in Warhammer, if you could just like move, I don't know, reduce their movement by 2 or something if you caused X number of hits on their unit, and didn't have to wound them, you just had to like shoot, because that's
it seems more realistic. Like you're not going to be marching and just people are raining arrows down on you. You'd be sort of like hiding behind your shields and whatnot. Interesting, very interesting. On to the next one. Give ground is the best result when losing combat. The loser simply steps back 2 inches, terrain permitting, and then attempts to put some much needed space between them and the foe, unless of course the winner chooses to follow up and press their advantage, in which the combat continues next turn. I think this one's a little bit more cut and dry, I suppose.
Why would you not I'm just thinking, why would you not follow up? I guess it'd be, if they charged you, you pushed them back, or giving ground, or whatever it's called, sorry. And then it's your turn next, you might want to charge, because then you get charged. Because it doesn't feel like if you just follow them, you're not getting charge bonuses, are you? It just feels like it's...
And I can't see you can like wheel around and like charge anybody else, because it's only 2 inches.
So it'd just be interesting to see what dynamic comes out of that, if people just tend to just follow up anyway, or they go, well, depending on, if it's if your turn, I'm not, because I'm going to charge you in my next turn.
Unless you're a flyer or something,
Yeah.
Or if you're in a situation where you've been fortunate to win that combat and they've given ground, you're in a combat where you're disadvantaged and you're trying to prolong things as much as possible. You might not want to go back in for another round of combat the following turn. If your turn's next, you might just I'll just sit there and let you charge me so that there's been an extra turn. You haven't broken me, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Yeah.
I suppose that's one way to do it.
Yeah, it does detach you. Like the other option is push them back, charge someone else at them, in the flank or whatever, then you're free to go do something else eventually.
Yeah, for
you're
sure.
not getting stuck.
So, it's
especially
good as
like
not
I said,
automatic.
Like you can't pin like a general on a, if you charge like a tar pity crappy little, unit into their dragon and try and pin them, it's like, well, bang bang, you push them back, stay there. Next turn, I fly away. So
that's a really good point. That's actually massive. Yeah, you're giving the initiative to the winning side. So
the more and more I see this, there's so many things that just let me tell you that if you've got flying big tough monsters. I don't know. It feels like it's going to be back to that a little bit, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, very hard to pin them down. Well, literally, that's the core part of the game now. No more pinning, if anything.
I wasn't a fan of these huge tar pits that cost next to nothing. Like it.
Nah, true. Yeah,
they did. Like in 8th, you saw that getting abused like a little bit. Well, massively with the. The huge zombies. Like I was.
Oh God, yeah.
I did that a few times, and you saw these huge Skaven slave units, and people are just can shoot into them as well, and it's just No, it's a good mechanic, and hopefully the maneuvering. It seems like they're that maneuvering is such a huge point of the game, which obviously it was in 6th as well. Yeah. Which is really good to see.
I just feel like going back to last week too, and you sort of touched on Andrew, like high leadership armies, they're just not running away. You know what I mean? Like they're just it's going to be interesting.
My dwarves might dust them off.
They're going to be pretty hard to crack. I was really with this whole morale section. I did I did feel a bit deflated when I read it, and I was like, "Oh, this is largely a rehash of last week." In a bit more.
The result was there a
bit more details. But a lot of it. I was expecting that there'd be another sort of thing about it goes into morale a bit more. Like things were becoming like a disorganized debuff or something like that. After you fall back or something. I mean. There isn't, and I don't know if that's. I mean, I haven't played it yet, so maybe the game doesn't need that kind of thing. I just have to wait and see.
Well, it's what Andrew said. Like, what is the negative getting pushed back? I guess we don't know.
Well, it doesn't seem to. Well, nothing they've mentioned here.
Not really. I mean, apart from the other unit charging you again, and they getting the charge now. That's about.
Yeah, that's true. And if there's no step up, that'd be really important. If there is step up, the charging is less important.
Yeah.
I suppose they don't want to give away all the rules. But we'll see.
They give them away and then they put it in a very obtuse way. That makes it hard to discern. Shall I talk about psychology?
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. So this is even shorter. I think it's only like 3 or 4 paragraphs, I think. So this just talks about how all your classic psychological effects are in the game. So fear, terror, stupidity, animosity, frenzy, unbreakable, stubborn, and hatred. But while instead of being a separate part of the book, they're all going to be pushed into the universal special rules.
Yeah.
Interestingly, they say they are going to look at other universal special rules in a future article as well.
Oh, I missed that. So that's probably another one because we know we've got magic next week.
We've got magic next week.
So what do you mean by what do you think that means? I mean, they don't. Let me just. Do you think? Do you think there's a chance here that we're not going to get BSB rerolls for psychology tests because they're not really ever mentioning psychology tests? They're just fear tests, terror, break tests.
Yeah,
because they're just a test. Like there's nothing. Do you know what I mean? Apart from it being a leadership test, nothing. A fear test has got nothing to do with a stupidity test or a. Do you know what I mean? Like in terms of.
Yeah, I wonder that. Like, I reckon the way they've put it into the universal rules means it's less likely, I think, that BSBs will give you the reroll because it was, classic in 8th, wasn't it? Just you reroll all psychology tests.
Yeah.
But if there's no psychology umbrella anymore.
And what about immune to psych? What does that become?
Well, that's interesting because the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth is immune to psychology.
Yeah, they'll probably just destroy the whole wish list then. But anyway, that's fine.
Yeah, because if they just put in a keyword like, fear is psychology, terror is psychology, and then immune to psychology, then it doesn't really matter that they're now considered a special rule because they're all still in the psychology umbrella.
Unless you're just saying, you can pull that section of the rule book out and carry it around. I don't really get.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah. Anyway, there's another example where they're explaining something that no one really cares about.
Oh dear.
Animosity's there, cool, which is I like. I wonder if that's going to be generified a little bit, or if it's just like, because would that ever be in the big red, the big rule book, or
I think it is going to be in the big rule book.
Yeah, I reckon it would be.
Yeah, the way it's listed there amongst all the other generic ones. Which makes you wonder if there'll be other units.
Should be good because you might end up with multiple sort of green skin, units in other armies.
Well, you might be able to use animosity too for things like the Chaos God marks and stuff and things that, where you might end up having animosity against different. Oh, especially you might in the Empire, if they're going to split the Empire into like 3 things, they might have animosity against different. I mean, I'm totally shitballing here. There's no evidence at all.
Hey, you're selling me. You're selling me. I'm on board with this. I mean, it would be animosity there. Like that's really hilarious. Because I was thinking more like some of the beast herds might have it because they could have an unruly rule or something like that.
Yeah, that's the thing. There is. There was that, and not Nobblers did they? No, I'm probably thinking of that. I'm probably thinking of the Ungors, whatever it was. Yeah. Cool. Okay.
It would be good sort of simplifying some of these rules, so it's not like every army's got so many similar rules, but they're not the exact same ones.
I don't care about like different rules for different armies. Just don't call it a different thing. But when they're quite confused as hell. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it just makes it easy to sort of learn other armies that you might not play yourself.
Yeah. What do you think is going to happen with Stubborn? With the break tests? Do you think they'll just either give ground or break and flee, or
maybe Stubborn becomes the old sort of thing, like you can't give, or maybe you just can't fall back. Maybe you just break and flee. There's no other. Yeah, I don't know. Which is interesting.
Yeah, or do they get rid of break? Like, do you give ground or something, or do you not give ground at all? Do you just sit there and be
literally?
static?
If you think of a stubborn block, then it's not moving.
Yeah,
maybe that'd be interesting. Yeah,
it might not. Yeah, because if it does, it might not make it as strong as what it used to be.
And even unbreakables like that, like
Oh,
well, I guess you could flick it around the other way, where they can never, they never run away, but maybe they still get pushed back.
Yeah,
they might just give ground automatically or something. Yeah.
Although if you're Umbra, like, obviously that's one good thing with Troll Slayers is you are stuck there.
But I mean, would it be against the law if, for example, and law is in LORE, if you had like a block of Slayers, they got a massive unit hit them, and they're getting pushed back because there's not many Slayers and they're dying, but they're not running away. To me, that still feels like something that's unbreakable.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So move on with the psychology though. So fear is probably the one they mentioned first, which has some changes going on. So basically, if you have they use unit strength again in this. So if you want to charge a fear coursing unit, but you have a lower unit strength than the unit that you want to charge, you've got to actually take a fear check. If you fail it, you can't charge. And then if you're in combat with a fear coursing unit, I think it's regardless of unit strength because it's not mentioned for this part. You've got to check, and if you fail the check, you suffer -1 to hit.
And but this is like the big thing there is it's every round, which I like.
Yeah, because is it? I think it's every round in 8th. Was in 6th edition? Was it just the first round?
Oh, I thought it was only the first, but maybe you're right.
Yeah,
I think you're right. 8th was it, but I always used to forget it. That's what made it so useless.
Yeah, because you got to re-roll anyway, so it didn't really matter. No one ever played it.
Was it weapon skill 1?
Yes.
And then therefore you're still hitting on 5s or like, whereas this you can hit on 6s. Oh, no. Sorry, other people might be able to hit you. No, it's probably still going to be the same.
I think this is probably better.
Yeah.
If you go to weapon skill 1, then suddenly anything with weapon skill 3 hitting on 5. So wait, skeletons are they 3 or 2 weapon skill?
I love 2. 2, 3.
I thought that one. Well, maybe.
Oh.
I thought they were 1, but whatever.
No, zombies would be 1 or 2, wouldn't they?
Mm.
Oh, you said skeletons.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Aren't they 2, 2, 3, 3? Like, is it?
Yeah. Sorry, I thought you said zombies. Yep. Skeletons.
Yeah,
they're 2.
I think it is.
So
I think
you'd be hitting
-1
on
to hit
fours.
is better.
Yeah, maybe the -1 hit is.
Because, if you're like fairly even, it's literally a -1 to hit. And like if it falls at like, like if you're on this 4 up thing, you're going to go to a 5 up. Like you're going to, I don't know. It feels like it's better by a little bit, but it's not as bad as 6 in terms of being able to auto break them and stuff,
Yeah, if you just have an unlucky roll, your weapon skill 5 guys aren't going to weapon skill 1. They're just...
Yeah, weapon skill 5 I think is probably the important one. Because if they're only weapon skill 2, rank and file type stuff, and your weapon skill 5, and in this game you'd be hitting on 2s because you're more than double the weapon skill. So it's only -1 to hit. Whereas if you drop to weapon skill 1, then you'd be hitting on 4s. Yeah. So maybe -1 to hit isn't as punishing, I guess. I don't mind that you have to test to charge. Like that is something that 8th didn't have at all. I think 8 only had.
Was that terror that you had to do it? That was it.
Yeah,
if
terror.
you're charging or being charged by a terror causing or within 8. Yeah.
So I like that they've got that.
6 is that 6 though? Because what's 6? Is that fear? You start to take in 6. You take a test, don't you?
To charge, you mean?
Yeah.
Or...
I didn't think so to charge.
Or was it only when you're in combat?
I thought it was terror. You had to take a test to charge.
I think you had to. Yeah, if you went to charge, you have to take a test.
But it's something to do with units.
In 8th, you don't have to check to charge anything.
But 6 you do, and that's unit strength as well, isn't it? Wasn't it?
Yeah,
is that only the break?
I thought that was break. Your auto break if you get beaten by a larger fear-causing unit. I think fear, there's no... I thought you could just charge in with a fear-causing unit.
No, you have to check before you can charge a fear unit. I think your unit strength plays into it as well. Like if it's like... If you lower unit strength then you can't charge them, I think. Actually, or no.
Yeah, well, that's 6 though, but that's cool. Yeah, okay. So they are... Yeah. They're playing around with it. I just don't know if the -1... Yeah, I thought the -1 to hit is better for people who cause fear, but maybe it's not. Okay.
I hope they don't just throw fear around as much as what they did in some of...
okay.
Like... you go, Josh.
In 6, I mix it up. So it's when you get charged by a fear-causing enemy. If they outnumber you and you fail the test, then you flee.
Right.
Yeah.
If you outnumber them, then you're hitting on 6s for the first round. If you want to charge them, you have to take a tech. Doesn't matter what your unit strength is. You just have to check a fear test to see if you can charge them or not. That's a fear as well. It's terror. Yeah. Yep.
Cool.
So where was I? Yeah. So then terror. But let's talk about terror, right? So what do I have to do here? So yeah, if you charge, as I say, which is pretty classical. If you fail the terror check, you flee.
Yep.
And then you also have an extra -1 leadership penalty when you're taking a break check against a terror-causing unit.
Again, another reason to bring a big monster.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, they made no mention of being within 6 inches of a terror-causing unit at the start of your turn or anything like that.
No, but I mean, I'm guessing it's in there, something like that.
Well, maybe. Hopefully. It's been in there every edition of the game, hasn't it?
The fact that it's so hard to break people and everyone's just moving around, it really makes this important to bring at least something that causes terror. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or be immune to it. And you don't care. I feel like there's a strategy there because any penalties to leadership is pretty big, especially when it's like that type of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was sort of hoping there would be a penalty for leadership in fear as well. Just with that, I mean, the auto break fear in 6 is massive. Yeah, it's really cool, and I'm a bit sad that they don't have something. I knew they wouldn't have it in this edition. I was not expecting to have it, but I would have liked something.
Like even if you're like lower unit strength, you're -1 leadership when you're doing any tests. Yeah.
So you do get a leadership.
Whereas terror maybe just is always -1.
-1, or terror is like -2 might be a bit too powerful. I don't know, but if you're maybe it's just -1 for both, but if you outnumber them for a fear, I think that would have been That would have been cool. Because I feel like this game does need some leadership debuffs. Otherwise, things are just not going to be fleeing.
No, totally. I think,
breaking.
I mean, at least with what I've felt, and obviously you guys are a massive proponent of this, not being able to re-roll in 6 for psychology just makes it like, because even 8, leadership 8, even leadership 9, you're failing on a 10, 11, or 12, which is 3 out of 11 possible. No, it's actually not. It's not that. The probability is a bit different to that. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, it's still fairly high chance. Like if you're rolling enough leadership tests, you're going to fail a couple of them in a game. If you're causing them to roll it.
Yeah.
So maybe just having that's enough as well. And then if you've got these odd little -1s like this terror, then it's becoming quite important.
Yeah.
So
now that we're talking about leadership, I wish I had the Shaggoth 8 edition stats. I'm surprised
so
there's
someone
only
posted
leadership
that.
9.
I actually took a picture of that. The only difference is that they knocked BS off it.
Oh, so it's still leadership 9?
Yeah. So Dragon
okay.
Ogre Shaggoth in 8th is 7, 6, 3, 6, 5, 6, 4, 5, 9.
Okay.
So for some reason it's gone to Ballistic Skill 2 from Ballistic Skill 3.
Oh, I was wondering with that leadership if they were.
So I'm not sure what the what the go there is.
I wonder. Like, obviously, with the breaking not being quite as devastating as it was, as in like from combat, if the leaderships are going to get modified a bit. From that.
I don't know. I mean,
I hope so.
They're all slightly different. I felt like, was it one of the other ones had higher or lower weapon skill, like one of the elf ones, or what it was the other week when we looked at the stat?
This was it. The Swordmaster had a higher initiative. I think it was initiative 6 when it used to be 5.
Yeah, so they bumped a few little things, but
yeah.
Using more of that initiative value range,
because
you were talking about that the other week, although well, not really. I mean, you were saying you could use a bigger range.
We could use a bigger range,
and have more granularity.
Yeah. Anyway, they've obviously picked this guy because he's got a lot of special rules. Not that we know what they all are, but I mean, there's a few interesting ones there.
Yes, for those listening along, we're looking at the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth image. You've just done all the characteristics at least, and then it's got a whole bunch of special rules. Like how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 special rules? Have I counted that right?
Something like that.
It's a lot. So it's got Armor Bane 2.
Let's
intrigued.
Chat about that in a minute, but
very intrigued. I'll list them all, and then we can chat. Armor Bane 2, Armored Hide 2, which I assume is 5-up scale the skin type thing.
Yeah.
Close Order, Ensorcelled Weapons, Immune to Psychology, Large Target, Stomp Attacks, D3+1, Storm Call, Terror, and the Quickening Storm.
Cool.
Very inclement weather.
Before we get back on, so Close Order, for example, have we seen that before? Because I think we were discussing whether or not it would be on the unit profiles. Like, have we seen that?
We haven't seen it in a unit.
No, so that's confirmed in that sense that it's a Close Order unit. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay,
which is weird because it's like a single model.
It's like when what is it when the lone character is more maneuverable if he's in a skirmish unit, but if he's by himself, he's not, or something, or whatever it is. He doesn't have 360 line of sight when he's by himself, or something. Well, we'll start with
Let's talk about Armor Bane. I really want to talk
the
about
interesting one.
Is that because bows have Armor Bane?
That's absolutely right. Well, longbows, and assumably all bows have Armor Bane. Because some people were talking about, and I was thinking it might be like armor piercing at short range or something like that. But now we see it on a melee character.
Yeah,
it's clearly not going to be that. It's clearly it's what is it going to be ignoring a certain number of armor points? I thought it might be like the Horus Heresy rending, but it's written different. I just realized because I thought that would be interesting where. If it was an Armor Bane 1, then if you rolled a 6 to wound, you'd basically get a no armor save for that hit type thing. Like, and if it was an Armor Bane 2, you'd get on a 5 and 6. That'd be actually quite armor piercing, if you know what I mean. Like,
take out the armor. But the way they've written that, I'm like, oh, maybe it's not that, because in Horus Heresy they write armor bane 6+, armor bane 5+.
Yeah.
And that's effectively what it does. It does other stuff as well, damaging vehicles and stuff. But and then another person said it could be if you do roll a 6, like in this case, armor bane 2 might be if you roll a 5 and 6, then it is giving you the bumps to armor piercing for those rolls. So in the bow's case, maybe if you roll 6s to wound, then they are AP1.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That type of thing. So that could be something like that. I
So
feel like that's a bit weak.
AP2 plus, well, you'd be -3 from the strength 6, right?
Well,
So
this is what I was wondering. There's no
thing,
nominated armor piercing in this.
Well, I'm just wondering if you'll see a weapon that they use and it'll say like, two-handed great axe AP3 or something like that.
What I'm wondering is armor bane just armor piercing? Like this sheet doesn't say what that strength 6 is supposed to be. If they've decoupled it, then you can't assume that strength 6 is -3.
No.
Yeah.
And is armor bane just saying it's got a AP2 strength 6?
Yeah.
Is that all it is?
Which
you know
is
what I mean?
But then, but if they do that, why did they write that with the bow? That's the only thing I'm confused.
Because bow might just be armor piercing. Armor piercing 1.
Yeah.
But it
might
says
just be
AP
as simple
dash.
as that.
So that's like 9th age, basically.
You're right. It did say AP dash. Oh,
yeah.
Colin,
So it says AP dash and then armor bane 1.
Armor bane 1.
So I just think the Dragon Ogre. I don't know. I did think that though, Josh. I was wondering, are we just not seeing the whole profile, and it will actually say it's got, a great weapon, and then you look at great weapons have the AP on them. But I don't know. Like they because you see stuff like you might even see things like well, no, that probably doesn't make sense. I was going to say like strength ×2, or like depending on your strength, wielding the great weapon, it might be a certain, I don't know, might be change the AP value. I've no idea. This thing I don't know.
I have no idea.
I don't know what armor bane is, unless it is different from melee weapons, and it is literally just piercing when it's a melee weapon. Because in Horus Heresy there is such things as armor bane melee, armor bane like shooting. Although all that means is the effect is only on those things, but they do change it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Don't know.
I don't know.
Not that I know what my first thing, like the rending type thing, but if it was that, do you think that's OP if you had like bows that are strength 3? No, they don't have any armor piercing, but if you roll a 6, they ignore armor save.
Yeah. Yes, I do think that.
Because you wouldn't like that as knights, like shooting at knights.
If you have like a big, if you're shooting like 30 shots or something ridiculous, you're going to roll on a 6s.
So you're not going to be shooting 30 shots very often, but I mean.
Yeah, but I mean, bows are typically quite cheap, is what I'm saying. Like you could load up on that and really stack it.
So therefore,
that's essentially
OP,
a killing
then
blow.
It could be,
isn't that just killing blow?
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean. Like that's the same thing as like giving longbows killing blow, which is pretty...
roll to hit. You might get what if you're hitting 5s from.
Yeah, it is. I don't know what I was thinking. Yeah, so it's probably more closer to what that other guy was saying, that maybe it's if you do roll a 6 or a 5, in this case 5 and 6, then maybe it's giving you the arm piercing then.
Yeah. Which again is sort of weak. Yeah, I agree that one's too strong, the other one's probably too weak to bother.
Just give it the
having
AP,
it in a special rule.
God,
let's move on to another one because I just don't know.
No one knows what. So in source of weapons, that would be like magical weapons, basically.
Oh yeah.
Imagine. I like that we see stomp attacks back. I really like them,
but with an interesting
D3
change. Yeah, D3+1, which is the same as the stone thrower wounds. No more D6 wounds.
Which I don't mind, because it was a bit annoying when you had a dragon or whatever and you rolled a 6 or whatever. I mean, like a 1. And you're like, I really needed that stomp attack. At least you'll get at least another 2 hits, basically.
Between 2 and 4. I think that's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
I don't think this guy's on a huge base, but maybe the bigger base guys are going to have D6.
Do you reckon? Yeah, because what they had Thunder Stomp and Stomp. This is
they've
just join these together like they did in 9th or whatever and just put the because 9th did that, didn't they? Just stomp, but you had the value.
Yeah,
So you might just have stomp 1 for certain things.
Yeah. But you're at a disadvantage with a big base, like obviously compared to a smaller base. So yeah, I don't know.
What do you mean?
Well, if you can get more smaller bases in, obviously, and more things in. So a dragon on a 50 mil base is a hell of a lot better than a dragon on a 100 mil frontage.
Yeah, but everyone's fighting in the front rank.
Yeah, but you can get more units in. So if I've got a 50 mil base, I can get more units in.
More dragon,
I can get
ogre shaggles in. So
yeah.
The other direction. Sorry, I see what you mean now. Sorry,
yeah. Like obviously, you want a smaller base frontage.
Yeah.
Like
It's always
that's better than bigger.
In the way,
yeah.
And then obviously these guys used to have the stuff about they did, I don't know, they had lightning attacks, but they're also immune to lightning attacks or something like that, weren't they? And stuff like that. Is that these guys?
They sound vaguely familiar. Yeah. Never really
you never saw them because they were never used because so,
I feel like that's the stuff they used to have.
We don't know what they are. I don't really care, but no, it's cool. I just want to know what Armour Bane is, but at some point we'll find out.
I want to know what Armour Bane is. And then it's going to be, it's going to come out like, it is just armor piercing. And then that sheet about the AP0 on the longbow was just a typo or something like
it'll be
that.
Something
we'll
like that.
Finally, we can touch on Frenzy. Yes. So this gives models an extra attack in the unit, and you're immune for fear and terror. No panic mentioned in that sentence.
And not immune. Yeah, so you're not immune to psychology, just immune to fear and terror.
Yeah, or stupidity, I guess.
Yeah.
Although we can take it with a grain of salt because maybe it is just immune to panic and they just didn't say it because it wasn't mentioned in this article.
Yeah.
And then a frenzied unit is going to charge if they have to. It's charge if they can. If they're able to charge, they must charge, and they can never choose to flee from a charge. Which, again, is
so they don't say here
rules.
that you can restrain them type thing. Is that
no? It doesn't mention anything about overrun or pursuit or restraint. Again, I don't know if that's because they've changed it or whether they just.
Is that what, like in 8th and stuff, you could test or not? Like, did Frenzy always have to declare a charge?
You've always had to. You've always had to declare a charge. You've always had to overrun or pursue.
But it was those ones. Yeah, okay, yeah. So that's probably the same.
I would assume so. I'd be surprised if they got rid of that.
Yeah.
I would. It'd be funny if they were no longer immune to panic. I don't know what to think about that. That would be weird. See witch elves panicking off the board.
Yeah, well, that's it. If you're immune to terror, but you're going to run away from a pansy unit that's, panicked you.
Yeah, because someone else fled through you. So lose your frenzy and panicking. It just seems bizarre.
I think you're right. Like, it's almost like sometimes I couldn't say that. It seems like these are very loose, the rules. Like, as in, like, they're giving you a bit of a.
Yeah, I don't think it's written like the actual rule. Is that
not like a rule book. Like, it's like the intern or the whatever's had a have a stab at writing this, and they're just a lot of the rules. They just don't seem to obviously, make a lot of 100% sense.
Yeah.
So I dare say there's going to be a lot of change to what we actually see.
Yeah, for sure. And we've got one last little image, which is a dark magic, another spell. I think this is one with the highest casting value that we've seen so far.
Yeah, 9 up.
And it does seem pretty potent. So it's range of 12 inches, 9 up to cast. It's an enchantment. I can't remember what phase.
I think that was strategy.
Is. Oh, is that strategy? Yeah. Until the end of the turn, the target friendly unit gains the frenzy and hatred (brackets all enemies) special
extra
rules.
Attack, re-rolling hits.
Yeah,
against
that's
everyone.
gold.
It says until the end of this turn, though. And remember, it seemed like turns would change to mean your turn.
Well, yeah, that's rounds. So each player has a round, and then the game has. Oh wait.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, like, does this? I think it was rounds were like battle rounds. Like you had 5 rounds each one.
Oh yeah, and then each player.
And then you had a turn, and I had a turn in that round. Does this mean that I'm only frenzy and hatred in my turn, so therefore I'm not getting that in your combat phase?
Yeah, sounds like it.
maybe.
Sounds like it.
Which you don't usually see for this type of spell, do you?
Like, no, well, usually you buff something and you get it until your magic phase again.
Yeah.
So I just wonder if that's different or not with this.
And especially Frenzy. A lot of this Frenzy, a lot of spells that have Frenzy, often the unit just keeps Frenzy. Like it doesn't wear off usually. Which is interesting. Hatred obviously only goes for 1 turn anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, the ability to combo them together synergistically, that's really powerful. That's crazy.
If you're rolling 2d6 to get that 9, obviously.
We'll find that out next week, I guess. Because it's quite hard to.
Yeah, unless you're adding your wizard level to it or something.
Yeah.
The thing, I hope it's not just 2d. I mean, I don't know. I'll play whatever. It doesn't bother me. But it feels like if, say it was just 2d6, what's the chance of a 9+? It's quite high. Like it's quite low, like to get it. Yeah. And I don't know, by the general rule, when you're trying to play, I don't know, like competitive, which is ironic, but we'll talk about, we're not talking about this stuff in the chat with ASB, but it's like you would never plan for this to go off because it's like so hard to cast.
Well, you don't need, but you can, true. At least you don't have to charge things in before you, like, classically, if the magic phase is after the movement phase, so at least this way, you can cast it and then decide if you're going to charge or not.
Yeah. Oh, can you? I can't even remember what the order was on that. Was that right?
Huh?
Like
if it was in strategy,
I just can't remember. Oh, yeah, it would be. It was in strategy, sorry. Yeah. And then you declare charges in movement. Yeah, that's right. Sorry, that's right. So it definitely was. Yeah. No, you're right. So you'd know you had it first. Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. But if that type of spell, you can get off before you even attempt to charge. Well, that's
a big one. Yeah,
it's an interesting.
Yeah, mechanic. Just I don't know. I hope it's not just throwing a lot of 2d6s around, but who knows? Well, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find it. We'll find it next week.
Surely Techless can cast spells easier than someone else and stuff.
Yeah, you'll definitely get pluses to cast.
Yeah,
I think
yeah. Sure.
Pluses are.
Yeah.
I almost feel like to make like. I'd be thinking that like a Lord Level Wizard might get +2 to cast, and then
I think that something like that would be good. Yeah,
because if it's +4, then it just makes makes it too easy.
Yeah,
maybe +2/+1.
And then we don't know how the dispelling works. I mean, it is a good time to bring it up. Obviously, the next week is Magic, so this is the stuff we're gonna. Hopefully, they answer a lot of those questions.
Speculation, Colin. That's what.
And not just go, here's the different laws, and this is what happened with Empire, and there's no colleges, but they don't actually tell you much about the actual Magic phase. I hope they actually give us a bit of meat on that bone. We'll see.
I'm sure they will.
Especially how dispelling works and stuff like that.
I'm sure they will. Yeah. I'm sure we'll go into dispelling and all that kind of thing next week.
Cool. We'll learn a little bit more with more questions, but
more questions.
I know, not as much as I was hoping for. Not as much, but there's some good things in there, I suppose. But yeah,
the thing is, like, the cool thing about this, and we've said it before, it's just Warhammer Fantasy, so it's like it's not going to take any. Like, you'll be playing. You might make a few mistakes in looking at the rules in a game, but it's just going to be playing the game. Like, it's so close. So,
but surely they're just going to be trickling this sort of stuff out, I'm guessing, as we go on. So
it's not like switching to AOS, where everything was totally new and the dynamics were weird and all that. Like, that's what I like about this. Like, we'll work it out. That'd be good.
Yeah.
Oh, well, should we move on to chat with ASB then about competitive gameplay? And so we're back, and today we're joined by a host of another Aussie Warhammer podcast, and that's ASB from the War Dollies, mate. How are you today?
I'm good. Gomo. It's Gomo.
It's Gomo. Yeah. Or Colin. You probably know me as Colin, but that's cool. Yeah. We're trying to just push out, what did you say? Our alter egos.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. No, thanks, mate. Thanks for coming on. I don't know. I thought, before I jump into the main topic, I thought it might be probably just good. I don't know if people listen to your podcast or they don't listen to ours, your ones don't listen to mine or whatever. So I thought maybe why don't you give us a quick background of not only who you are and maybe even the War Dollies podcast, but also like how the hell did you get into wargaming in general and what versions, like at least competitively, which ones have you played? I mean, yeah, like I'm sure you've done that background in War Dollies episode 1, but just for those who haven't listened to it, man, that'd be really good.
Well, I guess, legends. Thanks so much for having me on. Long time listener.
Yeah, you have been asking out. I was saying yes, and then I kept going, damn it, I need to get you on. Sorry.
As poor Josh found out, I do enjoy to talk, especially about about gaming. So I guess quick background. So I was born with a club foot. So it's a disability of the foot where it's all mangled basically, and so I was a bit shy on sort of organized sport. I play a lot of it now, and I did sort of once I got to very late primary school, sort of year 7, and so before that I did like random stuff, like I did rock climbing, so a lot of solo stuff. I did archery, and then when I was in like year 4, I think it was, I had a mate bring in some ultramarine assault marines into school. I think it looked like he dipped them in house paint. And to be fair, my first army wasn't much better. But
classic.
Yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. And the first model I ever painted was a 5th edition Bretonnian Knight, and this sort of coincides. This would have been around 2001, and it was like right at the start of 6th edition. I think 6th edition maybe came out. I think my first White Dwarf might have been like the 3rd or 4th 6th edition White Dwarf magazine.
Yep.
And I remember my dad then for Christmas got me like a Hordes of Chaos army. Basically, I got like 36 or 3 boxes of 12 Chaos Warriors, a Chariot, an Archaon, the metal one.
On the horse thing.
With the the cape waving and all that. And I think I might have got some Chaos Knights as well, the metal 6th edition ones. And then I became one of those rats that just hung out at Games Workshop. My local store was Rundle Mall in Adelaide, because I'm from SA originally, although I live in Queensland now. And I was one of those kids that I would get there, like my mum would drop me off at the bus stop, school holidays, like 7 o'clock every morning on her way to work. And I would catch the bus down. I would have a Hungry Jack's cup that I would buy at the start of the school holidays and refill unless it died, as we all did. Get Donut King there in the morning, and I'd basically hang out at Games Workshop all day, playing games, harassing the staff, painting, because back then they actually had painting tables and you could go in there, and they almost became like big brothers. The all the staff, both the perm and casual guys, and then a role came up for they were recruiting casuals for games nights mainly, and so I managed to weasel my way into getting that. They were only meant to take 1; they took 3 of us because we're all regulars. And to be fair, I actually only did 1 shift a month, but I got 50% off.
Yeah, because that's all you need to get into it.
It was, and like you think when you're 14, 15, and especially if you're only working 1 shift a month, and I think I got like $25 a week pocket money or something like that from my parents back then. So we're talking 15 years ago, 16 years ago, because I'm 32 now, and that was that was the best part of it, I think. And then I remember it would have been, if I then transition into competitive gaming. So I think it was 2005, rings a bell. So 6th edition still. And I took my Bretonians to a tournament and I was just hooked. It was only a 12 player, two days. I think it was 2,000 or 2,250 points. And I was just hooked on competitive gaming after that. And to the point where I almost didn't enjoy playing casual games anymore unless it was practicing.
Practice.
Yeah. And so, then I kind of, played all the way through the rest of 6th edition, all of 7th edition. And then 8th edition dropped, 2010 from memory?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So I think I missed the last half of the last 6 months of 7th edition, or I played maybe 1 tournament. And then basically 8th edition dropped. Went and played one tournament. It was such a big change for me, going from, no pre-measuring, template weapons, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And I took my vampire counts and I just didn't enjoy it. And so I also, discovered that there were these things out there called girls as well at the time. And so, I like a lot of people do, right? I took a hiatus until, when was it? When I turned 30, and I was like, right, it's probably best for my health, my liver, my relationship, all of those things.
If I start playing Warhammer again, is that that sounds very ironic, but
to stop going out, Friday, Saturday, sometimes Sundays, and the occasional Wednesday or Thursday nights, because I was too old to do it anymore, because that's what I loved all through my 20s. I loved to party basically, and work hard, play hard. I'm in sales, always have been, and I started playing Warhammer again, and thankfully I kept it all. The only army I sold was the Chaos Army, because, as the description earlier, house paint, and so I sort of found my way back in playing 9th Age, because obviously the old world had been blown up, RIP, and that's kind of how I so I played 9th Age. I found it a bit sterile, to be honest. Played for a year, managed to get into the Masters, and the Masters was my last 9th game. I think by then I was kind of already done. I knew I wasn't into it when I sort of went there. I didn't plan for it. I just took a list and just went, and I got absolutely belted, basically. So I was about to swear, but I remember I listened to one of the players, and they're like, "We like how this podcast no one swears." So I was like, "All right, I'm gonna."
Oh, you can swear. I swear.
You can swear if you want.
Cool.
Yeah, there's no rule about that.
Always marked as explicit. No, you can swear. I mean, is there a rule that you can't swear if you're advertising? Is that something on Apple's thing or some crap, or YouTube or something? I don't know. But we're not on them, so it doesn't matter. We're not sponsored, so it doesn't matter.
And then found my way back to 6th edition, which, to be fair, 6th and 7th were my sort of my favorite. That's where I played most of my games, and I guess it was a big part. Like a lot of probably us, sitting here right now and people listening. It becomes a big part of your childhood. You sort of reflect back and you go far out over. Apart from a bit of a hiatus, you're like, 2/3 of my life I've been doing this for, telling myself that I'm cool.
I mean, I've said it on this podcast before. Like when G-Dub blew the world up, man, a bit of me died, and I'm so glad when it's coming out. Like it's seriously, like, it's weird, isn't it? It's like something that you've done since you were. Yeah, I did it since I'm 44, so since I was 13, and to have that not there is a really weird thing. And then at least it's, well, hopefully coming back. I don't know. It's a bit psychologically strange, but at the same time, I think people could understand what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Who just have to deal with it. So
you could imagine my horror when I had gone through a hiatus for what was 2010 to 2019, and what would happen is every probably 18 months I go, I should get back to playing. And I'd go and look at Games Workshop's website. I'd see the new models and I'm like, I'm going to do this army. I'm a bit, ADHD like that. And I'd plan it all out. I'd even get some of my models out and go, right, we're going to get back into it. Where's a tournament? All this. I also lived overseas for a couple of years, which didn't help. And it was in the Philippines where there's no Warhammer. And so my horror was when I was in the Philippines, I was feeling a bit homesick, and I was like, I'm going to go look at Games Workshop's website. Maybe I could do this while I'm over here, right? Something constructive. Yeah. And to my horror, I was like, wait, Age of Sigmar, is this they changed? Is it a new edition? Like, what's the, and I was like,
wow.
Wait, what? And I'm like, wait, where's Wargamer AU? I'm like, and so I didn't even know, so that was hard.
Yeah, that would have been strange. And it's funny, like, because even people are saying it now. Like they actually, there was a guy at Legion's Club on the weekend. I dropped in to pick some stuff up, and he didn't even he only just realised it, like, been out of it that long, and he came for the first time and didn't realise this whole what was this old world stuff coming back? What, did it go away? Like, he totally missed that whole thing.
Jeez,
it's just so funny. But I mean, you get
like
busy.
It's just a
game. If you're not looking at it, you don't know. And there's no one out in your normal probably social life that knows anything about it. So cool. No, that's a good background. So yeah, okay. Well, I didn't because I was going to ask you that because I wasn't sure if you had only played 6 or I'm assuming you did 9th. I think you might have said that when we met at Castle Assault. But yeah, so you pretty much skipped all of 8th pretty much, which is cool. No, it's interesting to have that viewpoint. We probably won't go into, maybe we can get you on for a different episode around the old world, but given that it's pre-measuring is in there and stuff, and if there's what your take on that is, but I guess that's we can probably catch up on that at some point. But
you can see my tears.
Yeah. Cool. No, okay, so look, I'll try and intro the topic, and I was describing this to the guys earlier that it's a little bit like The Castle, if anyone knows that movie, and all the people who aren't Aussie don't know that. But it's the vibe of this episode is I guess having a bit of a competitive-minded player on. I wanted to sort of chat about how you not only how you become a competitive player or at least a competent one, but what are some of those tips and tricks, and hopefully not just focusing on 6th edition Warhammer or 9th Age or whatever, something that would outlast any of the editions. So I don't know, not totally I don't have a specific set of questions or anything, but we just wanted to talk through some of that. And ASB, you said when we brought this up, you sort of went off and also brought up a bit of a checklist yourself, which we can run through that as well. So hopefully that is clear for the listeners. So we're just going to sort of chat, competitive tips, tricks, all that sort of stuff. Maybe what each of us do, but obviously focusing on what you do, ASB, as well, because obviously you've had some success there this year. What'd you say? You've won 2 and placed second in 1.
Yeah. So won 2 and came second. It was it was my first 6th Ed tournament. Coming back into it, I flew down to Sydney for what's it called? Sylvania. That's the
ShireCon.
ShireCon, that's the one.
Yeah.
And I had a great time. I was like, oh, this is what I missed. Instead of playing 9th, and it came down to, it was actually a 3-way tie for tournament points between 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and it came down to victory points. And there was only 450 points separating 1st, 2nd, and 3rd on victory points. It was that close.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I got second at that. It came down to 2 dice rolls for a ward save. So Nick Taylor, who I played in the final game, so I had to beat him 16-4 basically to win. I beat him 15-5, and he had in both my turn 5 and turn 6. I took a pot shot with Bowman against Chaos Furies, and he had to make a 5-up ward save in each turn, and he rolled a 5 in turn 5, and he rolled a 6. I got one wound in each turn, and if I'd killed that one model, because of the way that the scenario worked, so it was the same as Table Quarters, except there wasn't the tie for contesting by just having one model. So basically, if you had unit strength 5 and your opponent didn't have a unit with unit strength 5, then it was basically your quarter.
Yeah.
Yep. And so he had 5 fury, and flyers counted, unfortunately for me. So I got second, but it was for a tournament to come down to literally the last dice roll of the game, because I went second being a Bretonian player. That was great.
Cool.
Yeah, I've done all right.
Yeah, and obviously you're looking forward to the old world and that sort of community. Yeah, cool. No, I think it's going to get big. Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, I don't know where we want to kick off. I mean, I had some notes, but it sounded like you had some notes there yourself, ASB. So, like, in terms of, and how did you describe it when you said you were on the train and you sort of wrote down some stuff? Yeah, like, is this about is this what you take into a game, or is it even above that? Like,
so it's basically a process.
Yeah.
It's a 3-phase process that includes pre-tournament, army lists, and then in tournament.
Yeah, okay. That's good. Yep.
I kind of realized I actually have probably somewhat of a problem when I wrote all these things down, and realized I was like, Jesus Christ, I actually do all of these things. That's kind of, I'm sure that my dad wished I did this many things for school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, some of the stuff I've picked up along the way, some of the stuff, it's like, when you think of, do you ever think of jokes and you go like who was the first person that ever came up with that? And you're like, I wonder if someone in one country came up with it, but then someone else also came up with it at a similar time, and therefore, there was no original. And so it's kind of a bit like that, right? I think, people come up with, they're not probably unique ideas. And then, some of them I've definitely stolen. I think we were chatting in the pre-pod that there's definitely guys out there that take it to a whole nother level with spreadsheets and getting their armies out and checking their deployment and all that kind of stuff. I won't lie, I've definitely done that once before. I wanted to see, I didn't set the full board up and everything, but I think it was more just to see if like a vampire unit at its maximum capacity in certain formation, would it fit within a 12-inch deployment? I've definitely done that kind of stuff before. Even though I probably could have just got a tape measure out, but I think it's
there's something about seeing the physical nature of it. Like it's even like the Universal Battle, and you could like lay it all out digitally, but it doesn't, like that's not going to translate to the tabletop when you're standing over it. So totally. You're not the only one who's done that. So cool. Okay, well let's walk through those three phases, because I started to get that a little bit when I was writing my notes. So I was like, there's certain things that you do pre-tournament type thing. Even why do you even choose a particular army? Then obviously you've picked the army, you're building a list. Then obviously when you're playing the game, So cool. Okay, so does that sound good, Josh and Andrew?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, cool. Oh, well, let's run through your first step then.
First step. So I think the first one is I think there's a big difference to me between a power gamer and a competitive gamer. To me, a power gamer probably meta chasers. They're the guys that you constantly see buying armies, selling armies. They want to win at all costs. They probably will do sneaky stuff that, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a second. And all of a sudden you go and talk to all of their opponents from the weekend, and they're like, wait, and you're like, So I think, definitely, I love the competitive side. I'm a competitive person. I think sales, right? Like, I play cricket still. I play C1s these days because the body can't, handle what it used to. But I even there, I'm like, I'm still so competitive. I'm like, I've got the competitive nature of someone that wants to be playing A grade, but the body and the skill set that can't do it anymore. And so, I think I'm just naturally, competitive, and therefore I enjoy that part. But I also enjoy the, what's the word I'm trying to think of? The process that actually goes into it just as much. Same with, like, I love sitting there and, just writing lists and then thinking about, like, sometimes just writing them for the sake of writing them without even, just coming up with ideas, a strategy behind it.
But it also feels like too, and I don't know, you'll probably jump into this. I wrote this somewhere on my notes, was like, sometimes I feel like, if you can be competitive, but it's like you've got an idea about a particular army or a theme, and it's almost like non-negotiable that you're going to take that particular, whatever it is. Say it's I don't know, like you've seen it with Bretonian armies. Some people have tried it like men of arm lists where it's crap ton of like foot troops. Like you wouldn't do if you're just power gaming. You're not going to do that. But if you're competitive, you might still do some dumb things like that. But then put everything in it to actually make it competitive. Is that sort of where you go, like when you pick armies and stuff? Like, do you look at the theme and the fluff, or is it still?
Oh, so my armies are always
because you've got that like that errantry army, and
So I mean, I can run that my Bretonians. So I guess I'll probably talk about the armies I actually play. So Bretonians, vampire counts are my two main armies. I do have a dark elf, high elf, empire armies as well, but they're in my pile of shame and in various stages. But I've got
I know how that feels.
Don't we
all?
The
pile of shame's getting smaller, Andrew. Go selling it.
Only slowly.
Yeah, because last I heard you were talking about taking dark elves to the next tournament or something like that, weren't you? You were going to try to see what you could wring out of that book to see if you could make a competitive list out of it.
That was the plan, and I'm actually kind of upset I'm not going to CanCon. My first child is due on the 8th of February, and it's too close, and I would be one, it would be annoying as all hell going like, I'm in game 3 and I'm, whether I'm doing well or not, going, oh God, I have to pack all my models up. I have to book a $600 flight from, Canberra, or, get in the back of some farmer's truck and, traipse 15 hours.
Yeah,
back
it's a big drive.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the plan originally. It was an MSU Dark, because Dark Elves are rated as one of the probably bottom 2 books in 6th edition.
Yeah.
And so I was like, let's try and get that there. But yeah, I think, when it comes to actually collecting an army, I'm a bit of a history buff, history nerd. I used to get called Wikipedia at school. Favorite period of history is the Crusades. That's where the Bretonnians came in. So my army is actually themed around the Teutonic Knights. Everyone did the Templars, and I was like, I'm not doing the Templars. Everyone did that. And so I chose the Teutonic Knights. I actually did a lot of research. All the characters were named by actual Templars. I even have Frederick Barbarossa, the Holy Roman Emperor, who died on the way to the Third Crusade. He drowned in full armor. I made the Green Knight out of him. So
cool.
Yeah, and then my peg is like a flying Saracen, and then my hippo is basically meant to be Gabriel the Archangel, and so it's all sort of themed. And so some like my vampire counts in 7th edition, I think I nearly won every single tournament I took them to. But I always got really good composition scores, and 7th edition vampire counts were one of the most broken books there was, but I didn't tend to take all of the broken stuff. I kind of took a mid-tier list that I enjoyed playing and was more about actually, I guess, exploiting the gameplay rather than exploiting the list design.
Yep. I get that.
And I rather a challenge than just taking a busted list, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I guess
it answers my. That's exactly right. So I totally agree with like the difference between like power versus competitive. Yeah.
I mean, you look at Alex Burkett, right? He pushed my list. I only got 13 points out of him at Castle Assault. There was actually someone on this podcast who got the other point out of me, which is Andrew. But,
Andrew. Yeah.
He took a Savage Orc list.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, all ball. Yeah, savage on foot and ball riders. Yeah.
And it's. I think that's what it's all about. Is challenging yourself. So part of it's that too. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the process, so I kind of divided into 3 sections. So you've got pre-tournament and pre-submission. Then you've got army list reveal pre-tournament, and then you've got pre-game, and which is the individual each game in a tournament. And so, I guess for me, do you want me to go through the steps and we'll talk about
do that?
One,
yeah, exactly. And we'll just we just either ask you, it'll bring up a thought, that stuff. Yeah, sounds good.
So I think the first thing I do before I do anything is review the pack.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a kind of I actually listened to Patty the other day saying on here how no one reads tournament packs. I'm a tournament pack nuffy. I read them literally cover to cover. Again, it's something I enjoy about. Yeah, the detail.
Good to hear someone's reading it at least.
Yeah. It's not for nothing.
Josh spent a lot of time with that.
Yeah.
And I think one, it's out of respect to the TO. I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
But I think the amount of people that I've played over the years in tournaments, and they're like, "Oh, wait, what?" And then I'm like, "Did you not read the scenario? Like, we even talked about it at the start of the game." Oh, and so I always want to make sure, because I hate that feeling, right? Same with rule stuff. It happened at Castle Assault in the last game. Like, I hate that feeling of someone feeling like you've cheated them even though you've played by the rules.
Played it right. Yeah.
And just like I hate going like, oh, what an idiot! I can't believe I just did that. He's right. When it's done, when it, I cop it. So yeah, I think that's part of it as well. And so part of reviewing the pack, I think, is reviewing the scenario, deployment, etc. in each of those games. I want to understand. And that's something I think I took from 9th Age, because we didn't really have scenarios in 6th edition, and 7th edition didn't really either. There was a couple of tournaments in South Australia anyway that did, but for the most part they didn't. And so, yeah, I like to review the
When you say
scenarios.
you review it, though, are you literally like writing notes down, or is it more like osmosis? You just read it and then that's just bubbling away in the background? Like how formal are you getting with...
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever taken notes. I think it is just to sort of like compartmentalize it, and I guess for me, every one of these processes has an objective. I think that's the key. So my objective in reviewing the pack is I want to decide what army am I going to pick. And sometimes I've already decided before I even review the pack. Sometimes I decide after. And then the main thing I'm trying to outline is, okay, what do I need to do to win the objective in each game? Because usually it's 3 points. So, if you can win the objective and aim to win the objective, the other thing I find too is if you're winning the objective, sometimes someone will make a mistake because they want to try and stop you. And all of a sudden you go, oh, yep, cool. And, that you've sort of thrown them. So that's a big part of it for me is I'm like, okay, what are the objectives? How can I win them? And this is before I build my list.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I guess, the first day. Do you guys do similar?
I probably not as much. I probably build that, but obviously I'm a bottom table dweller. So maybe mid table these days. I don't know. But like I 100% agree with what you're saying, and it's like one of these things. I'm like, yeah, I need to do that more rather than take a list at the end. I like not take a list, but build a list and then go, oh, how's it going to play in that scenario? Which is sort of the wrong way around. It's like, what do I need to actually win those objectives, and then build a list around that. I generally haven't, but that's usually because I'm painting up an army that I just like, and then I try to work it out. I think, Josh, you probably target the objectives a bit more.
Yeah, to some extent. And certainly, I'd be looking at it before I make the list, and you're right, it informs how you design it. Although I must admit, most of the time, because, I agree, Colin, you are sort of limited by what you painted, and you are often painting to a tournament as well. But most of the time when I'm putting lists in general, I try to make them fairly balanced. And most of the time that means that by and large, most objectives or scenarios you should be moderately competitive at. If you've got a list that can compete in all phases.
Well, I think with CanCon, there's so much stuff there that you really do need to, you need a mobile army, you need guys that can win challenges. Like there's all sorts of things that not a must bring, but it's definitely going to help you.
It's a diverse range of elements
banners
in that pack.
Yeah.
The different fortitude.
So
that's banners, wasn't it? Yeah, I think so. Banners, champs, and BSB.
It was all no banners. It was all about champions and
champions. BSBs, they're double. Yeah, the BSB. And
the
yeah, that's right.
It's actually one of the reasons I'm upset that I'm not going, because it is one of probably the most in-depth scenarios in terms of list building. I'm even tempted to actually write some lists just to see and go can I theory hammer a podium here?
I reckon you should theory hammer a Tomb King list. Yeah, we talked about it in Messenger. Yeah.
Actually, that's probably my next point is never take a net list, never get someone else to write your list. If you want to actually compete, it all comes down to your brain and how your your thought process and how you do it. So I think, and that again, that kind of is what separates to me a power gamer and a competitive gamer. Is power gamers just go, I'm just going to use a net list. Just because it's great. Sure, you might steal an item, you might steal an idea, you might steal a strategy or something like that and, make it your own. But yeah, I think not 9 times out of 10, a good competitive gamer with a balanced list, to Josh's point, over the course of a 5-game tournament or a 6-game or 8-game, like they used to be back in the days, will probably win out over a power gamer that takes a net list because they wrote it themselves, they understand how it works. And they can be matchup dependent to find the net lists. So I think it's interesting what Josh mentioned there is you want something that's going to compete in every phase. I teeter slightly, but also agree at the same time. And I'll explain what I mean. So I stole this from a 9th Age guy. And I think it's something I used to do anyway, but then I kind of more put it into words, which is pick 2 phases and dominate them.
Yeah.
And so when I'm building an army, so for Bretonnians, I'm normally looking to dominate the movement phase and the combat phase. However, I still want to then, and where the flip side of that comes in is the competitive. I then want to try and mitigate shooting and try and mitigate magic. And so it is, I guess, still balanced, but I want to make sure that I'm dominating 2 phases. There's 2 phases of the game, and movement has to be one of those always for me. That is just a non-negotiable, and one of them should never be shooting. Just because it's too unreliable for me. It's a complementary at best, Yeah, I think that Wood Elves are probably the only ones that can really do it, and then you play Avoidance, and it's what's the word? It's sterile avoidance, not high elf or dark elf avoidance, which is still more like
getting into
cuts.
position to actually,
comedy.
No, that's a good tip though.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I guess when you think about when you got objectives, typically they are designed either around the movement phase or the combat phase. Like there's not really many objectives in the game where you're winning through shooting or magic.
Yeah.
And I also then want to think about how can those, if I'm, let's say my Bretonnian list that I took to CanCon, and I also took that, it was a very similar list. I only made some changes to it based off the objectives between CanCon and ShyCon. And so for that, it's just about then tweaking obviously for those around the objectives. It was literally the change that I made. And so I guess what I'm then trying to do is build my list from that. I have another caveat in my lists, though, that every single unit and entry has 2 roles. If it doesn't have 2 roles, it's not on the list. And again, that comes down to flexibility.
I'll ask, the first thing I thought of that is, when you say unit, like what's a war machine? What would its 2 roles be? Or is that?
So, yeah, it's an interesting one. So, for example, a trebuchet is a perceived threat, and it can tie a table quarter.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah.
So everything has. If it doesn't have 2 roles, it's not flexible. If it can have 3 roles, even better. But it must have two roles that it can perform for me, or it's too one-dimensional, and therefore it becomes situational. And I find that by sort of adhering to that philosophy, I tend to build a list that is more balanced and essentially, because I think the thing is
flexible too, isn't it? That's the thing.
Yeah. And you want flexibility in a tournament. I'll give you an example, right? So if you look at my Bretonnian list, all of the knights, they compete in the movement phase and the combat phase. They can obviously charge, they can steal an objective. A lot of them can, that they mitigate psychology because of the errantry war. So there's multiple things that they're achieving. My archers, they're there to clear, or one actually. So archers, the biggest role they play is their cheap deployments.
Yeah.
And we'll come to that, I guess, a little bit later in the checklist. But everything must have 2 roles at a minimum, or it's not on the list. What about for you guys? Like, do you do anything like that?
It's probably one of these things, at least for me, because I'm sort of getting back into, and I've always been I've been a casual gamer that always only plays at tournaments most of the time, which is funny. Like, you're prepping for a tournament, even though I'm not competitive in that regard. So I probably just haven't sat down and thought of it like I totally agree, and I think I've done that most of the time, but I probably haven't sat down and then gone back and looked at it from that point of view, which is is why I got you on to have a chat about those things. But yeah, totally get it. Like, one of the things I heard of from another player was like, imagine like every army, your army should play fine if you take a unit out, like, is the chance that you're going to lose a unit. Who was that?
Frank.
He said it. Yeah, that's right. On the other day, and I was like, that's like, to your point, it's a very similar concept, because if you've got these, if they each unit can do 2 things at least, then you've got some redundancy there, or you got some flexibility. So if you lose one, you should still be able to compete. You know what I mean? And so that it's a similar type of concept. Yeah.
And I think also, to tie into that, the other thing that I like is I always look at hammer and anvil. It probably ties more to my vampire counts than to my Bretonnians, but I still try and have anvils in Bretonnians. And you can actually build some cheeky anvils in Bretonnians. Like, you can have a unit of knights that's got a static combat res of 6, Josh, I think. And all of a sudden, and so I like to have a minimum of 2 hammers, ideally more than that, but you've got to have at least 2 like perceived threats that your opponent's going to go, oh God, like I'm shaking in my boots here. I don't know how to deal with that. And the more of those you can have, the more they're going to panic. And that's when you make mistakes because you start tilting, if you want to use the chess term. I also like to try, where possible, to have 2 flying characters, just for it's just the flexibility, especially with like Flyworks in 6th edition is just brutal to put it politely. I think that the next one for me, and this is all still pre-tournament, right?
Yeah.
I haven't even written my list yet. We'll finish writing it. So the next one is, so I want to compete, dominate 2 phases, but then I also want to buff the other phases as much as possible in reverse. So what I mean by that is, if you look at my Bretonnians, I have 2 level 1 damsels. I actually got a lot of spells off with that, funnily enough, at the tournament. But their main purpose there is 1 dispel scroll each. Again, I think any more than 2 is not fair, because you kind of, I don't. Again, I think that's
just totally shutting it down.
Which is boring. And then I also take the Chalice of Malfleur at all times with the Bretonnian list. Plus, you get magic resistance from them as well. So I've got myself 5 dispel dice there. And you've just got to be really, really clever, which we'll come to later as to, I guess, how you execute then in that phase. But then I'm giving myself some defense. Likewise, I take my BSB for my Bretonnians. He doesn't have the, I don't have a Sword of Might on him. He's got the Gromwell Greathelm for the 2-up rerollable armor save. But I actually give him, and I don't give him the +1 combat res virtue. I actually give him a virtue that means the unit he joins is immune to 25% casualties from shooting and from magic.
As in panic check.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so if you think about, and it's kind of points denial in a way. So if you think about that list, 473 points is invested into the Hippogriff. He can hide wherever he wants. And I can just be like, well, you're never going to get him. And then that unit of knights where I put both the mounted level 1 damsel and the BSB, they go in a unit of 7 knights of the realm that are immune to panic tests from magic and shooting. And so you're talking about the BSB bonus points, the general's bonus points.
So if you, worst case, you run somewhere and they can't, if they can't touch you, they can't kill you. Well, they can't make you run away.
I can literally run that unit and that character away. Yeah. That's half my army's points that you can't get.
Yeah.
And it's also mitigating your phase again. So your shooting phase and your magic phase with getting that unit. And obviously the hippo, he can just fly and hide from those things that can do that to him. So again, it's all about mitigating the potential damage in the phases I'm not going to dominate and therefore not be as competitive in. I still like light shooting. I think the trebuchet is all about perceived threat more than anything. It's a bit like Hellblaster volley guns. I heard you guys talking about them.
Yeah.
I will always pick one. I'll choose not to shoot it. But it's there. I should have
done with my steam tank.
The Hellblaster volley gun is like hip hop. Like I'm not saying he created it, but it's there. Like it just, you go, oh, I don't want to go near that. So yeah, and like I would literally do that. I would put him there and be like, I'm not going to shoot this turn, and they're like, wait, you're not? Because then they're like, oh, I don't want to go into short range because now you're at strength 5. So yeah, that's I guess the next piece is just buffing the reverse of the phases I'm not going to dominate. The next one, I think for me, is testing the list. And so if I'm playing in a tournament that's got,
have you got to list writing it now then?
Yeah, so now I've written
or is it like version 1? It's like, beta.
Yeah. So now I've written the list and now I'm going to like go and test it. So I've got, version 1. And I usually, for the first one, I'll probably just play a pitch battle. And I'll probably go and I usually try and pick someone that I know is a really good player and someone that I can play against that is, and I'll even tell them, can you tailor your list to play me? Like, I want this to be a hard game. So, I'll even try and do stuff like that. And then I'll probably look at the list and go, okay, how did it perform? what was this? And I'll sort of review each unit.
Yeah.
And then I'll also try and play every single scenario of a tournament before I go, to an event. So that's kind of my pre-game.
How many games do you reckon you get in? Because it feels like sometimes you have these. Can you be too reactionary? You know what I mean? Like you put this list down, you play it once, and then you go, oh shit, that you didn't play well. But like that's one game. Like do you factor that in? Obviously,
It's funny you say that. I had a tournament season in this is 2009. It was year 12. I should have been doing a lot more work, but I wasn't. And we actually started a South Australian Masters because the Masters was kind of dominated by the Eastern States because they had the biggest tournaments, and like it was hard, like especially for me. I was 17, turning 18 halfway through the year. And so I couldn't, be like, Mom, can I go with this random guy from, this hobby club that I met once in a tournament on a plane? You guys don't care about that. So they founded a South Australian Masters, and it started that year. And so the first 3 tournaments of the year, I took my vampire counts and won every single one of them. I wrote a list the week before without testing it and just took it. And, but I feel like I was at the point there, I'd been playing 7th edition at that point for the entire edition, played enough games. I knew the army book that well that I could just do that.
Yeah.
So sometimes I will do that. Since returning to playing, especially 9th age, I was all right at 9th age. I definitely, there's way better players in Australia than I am. That's a completely different kettle of fish. But yeah, I have definitely done, that before. Sometimes I think you don't want to overthink it too much.
Yeah.
You want to maybe make some minor tweaks and try and play with a list, especially if you're, and I probably do this more in 9th age because you always know there's objectives and there's 6 objectives. And they're always, there's probably always going to be 5 of those 6 objectives. There's no special objectives. So what I took in 9th age was always to try and play a list for as long as possible and only make very minor changes, maybe some items, that type of thing, to your point.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, did you find that as well, Andrew? Because you played a bit in 9th age, didn't you?
Yeah, but I'm all over the shop. I got so many armies that I was playing for fun sort of thing. But that's why I find probably I was just forgetting rules. Like, you'd be halfway through a game with your dwarves and like you could have like grudges and stuff, and I'd be like just completely forgetting huge rules that actually you'd just be like, oh. But that's sort of the problem. Obviously you were saying you were playing your vampires for like an entire edition, so you knew them inside out.
That's actually really interested in the old world coming back because I'm a bit time poor in terms of playing. Like I don't think I could play. I mean, maybe down the track I could, but I'm not going to ever play multiple games a week ever, probably.
Once you get past 20, it's hard to do.
Yeah. But I feel like it's the last few years with 6 and then 9th age and then all these different stuff, and it's like your head's just like, what the hell? It looks like the same game, but it's just not. So it'd be interesting to get back to that point where most of your time you're playing, at least square-based version, everyone's playing the same game. It'd be interesting if that improves that, Andrew. I don't know.
Well, we'll still forget just stuff. Saying, like, if we got the pack now, there's nothing stopping you and me from playing once a week or whatever and getting, it's just more of a, it's just the prioritization of it, I suppose. And hopefully with Old World and with 6 now as well, obviously yourself and me, obviously our interest has been piqued, and we have been playing a lot more than what we probably have been over the last few years.
You played more than me, that's for sure. Cool. Yeah, I mean, if we get time at the end, we should chat a little bit about strategies for people who are, time poor / and you're going to be very time poor ASB soon, so be very interesting to. I'm
actually quite lucky. So there's a Northside Alliance, which is the biggest 40 club in 40k club in Queensland, are about 2 streets from my house, and so I reached out to them, and we've got sort of 2 tables now every Friday, And so I've been sort of popping down there. And so when it's not cricket season, I'll probably try and get down there maybe fortnightly, once every 3 weeks, once the baby's born, I think.
Yeah.
Just depending on what, we're up to for the weekend, how settled she is, all that kind of stuff that, you guys are probably sitting there laughing and be like, you know nothing, Jon Snow.
But at the same time, every kid's different, so who knows? You might be right. So
that's true.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so you got your list. You've been playing and practicing against hard players. You've played every tournament game. Scenario. And you're still tweaking it, or like? Yeah,
so I'm tweaking. I think one piece of advice I'd give to anyone that wants to be competitive is don't swap and change. And what I mean by that is like don't go, I'm going to play one game with this and then decide and then play a game with a different army. You've kind of got to commit to that army and to that list build. You can change, chop and change a unit out between a tournament. Like I took out a unit of men-at-arms and 3 knights errant. So I had, 2 units of 9 plus the 7 realms. So I had 3, buses of 9 and 1 6 at ShireCon. But then I swapped the men-at-arms because there wasn't a scenario that I needed an infantry unit with ranks to compete in. And therefore I dropped them and dropped 3 knights, then added in the flying peg, basically.
Yeah.
So, like little tweaks like that are fine, but you can't just throw the whole kitchen sink out. Otherwise, you'll just be chasing your tail and you'll never be able to refine it, because part of it also, to Andrew's point, where he's like, when you're forgetting rules and all that kind of stuff, like the more you play with something, the more it just becomes, second nature.
That's right. Like if you're time poor, don't make it worse by trying to remember 10 armies. Yeah.
It's about having roles, isn't it? Like, as you say before, it plugs into that whole theory. And if you find that unit isn't performing its particular role, or something else is performing it for it, you alter it. You just swap it in or out, or change the unit.
Yeah. And I think it's probably a sport philosophy that I bring to that. I played relatively high level rugby union. I wish I was as good at cricket as I was at rugby union, but I had a role in the team, and I played that role. And there was, and I think rugby's a really good example of that philosophy. Is a front row forward is not a winger.
Yeah, totally. Different positions.
Completely different positions, different roles.
Different physiques.
So that's kind of the pre-tournament. Now I've written my list, and now I've submitted my list. So the next one is army list reveal. And so I've stolen a couple of things here from 9th Age. When I played in 6th and 7th edition, we didn't really have it wasn't open lists. You would go through your list before each game, but you wouldn't actually know the lists before the tournament. You would go in and you wouldn't even know what your opponent had unless you were like talking to someone in between game 1 at lunch, being like,
is that 9th Age? Is that, did you say? Is that like
back in the day?
Oh, back in the
yeah. So back in the day, I think it was late 7th edition.
Is that just internet? Do you think?
Probably.
I mean, there was a lot of there was a lot of stuff in 6th edition in particular where it was like,
well, it's supposed to be closed lists when you bring
it was supposed to be closed lists. So 7th edition, towards the end, when comp scores and stuff started happening pre-tournament, that's really when I think it became apparent.
Gotcha.
But even then, sometimes you still wouldn't get to see the lists. But it was like I never played a tournament where it was actually closed lists from memory, except for stuff like assassins, fanatics, etc., which is but basically, so the next one, when the lists drop, I will go through every single list and check it. Not to check if there's mistakes. But I mean, if I find one, I'll call it out to the TO and be like, I don't know if you picked up on this, but for me, it's about reading every single list, understanding. I'll go and check the book. What does this item do? What does this item do? What does this do? Okay, and then I start thinking. I'm like, okay, what is this model, what unit in my army going to do? Like all this, and literally, I'll go through every single list.
So going back to my original question, like what are you? Now, surely you're writing something down here, then, or is this just?
Yes.
Have you got a good memory? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I do have a very good memory. But So what I usually do is, and I wrote these in order, but I don't think I do this in order. I kind of do this all at once. So I check every list. So it's almost I do this for each list. I'll mark that list green, orange, or red. And green essentially means like I can get a big win in against this list. Orange is I might get a big win if I play well, but I could also lose. Red is I need to probably play for a small win or a draw, or I may even get a small loss depending on the scenario and all those types of things. Then I'll start, like once I've done that, I will then start looking at each objective versus that list. And I start building out a little note profile, and I keep it on my phone. And I will take it to the tournament with me. And it's almost like a cheat sheet of basically, okay, if it's this, remember this. If it's this, remember this. And I'll start thinking about matchups. Sometimes I'll actually get dice out and roll them and roll like 10 times and see what happens.
And for that, is that like a unit that you think I'm going to send, ideally I'm going to send this bus into that unit, so I'm just going to roll it out, or this character versus that. You're not doing it over the whole army. It's just ones that you think,
And it's usually I usually kind of go, okay, I can deal with this, I can deal with this, I can deal with this. Ooh, okay, that character. How do I deal with that? Have I got anything that can deal with that? Is there something I can do as like a fake to make them, can the trebuchet be a perceived threat here and, zone them or would a combo charge, how do I do that? And then I can start thinking about how I'm going to engineer that. And then it usually comes back to deployment. And that's where deployment's so critical. And so I'll start thinking about those things. And I basically write myself a cheat sheet for every single army list in the tournament. Right. And the place I do that is on the train on the way home from work, because I also find it a really good way of just detaching from the day.
That's a good tip. Just with the green, the traffic light type system, and you see this a lot, like if everyone's competitive and everyone's good, that totally makes sense, and you compare lists. When you're playing in a tournament where there's like half the field's probably first game, they haven't played a bit, like, do you factor in the player at all, or do you go
I played Andrew, his shit. Green.
I mean, I try and I'll usually look at the list. Sometimes I'll think about the player. And then see the other thing then, it's a good question actually, because then sometimes I'll go, okay, wait, I'm missing something here. So if it was Nick Taylor's quite a good player. I might go, I think I've missed something here. Or Josh, to be honest. I'd be like, what's he? And so I'll almost try and put myself in their shoes and go, okay, what have I missed here? This seems too simple.
What's this guy up to? Yeah.
Is there a trick that I'm missing? And I might even go and reread. And I'll definitely look at, players I know, and I know they're good. I'll probably put them almost in like a little sub list that I'll then read back over.
You'd spend more time on that one. Yeah.
There's another thing that I do in this point. One step that I forgot. Always grudge someone.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, okay.
Well, really? That's random piece of
always
advice.
be
And is
grudging.
that just so you know exactly you got that match up and you can practice for it type thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I've even gone to the point, and I've actually done this more than once. I've gotten mates to play with the person I'm playing in the first round's list before, just to see what happens. Obviously it's very different, but it's probably it's taking it to a new extreme. But yeah, I've definitely done that. But so I always grudge first round. I usually try and grudge someone that I don't just go bunny hunting. Sometimes it's for fun,
Yeah,
that's a grade. I'm going to grudge that, dude.
Just randomly grudge someone you never know.
And there's actually a strategy behind this. The strategy is this. In a 5-game tournament, if I lose the first game, it doesn't matter because I can submarine. But if I win, I get off to a good start. But also I know exactly who I'm playing first round. I probably know the objective first round. And so, grudging for me is actually, I love the psychology of gamesmanship. I used to do it a lot in rugby union. I had a state level hooker throw bent balls at the line out for an entire grand final because I just got in his head. And so I just love that psychology part of it as well. So part of it.
That's good. That's a really good.
Yeah. So always, and I think the other thing too, right, is so I grudged Alex Burkett for Alex has become a good mate of mine. I talk to him a lot. I've only met him twice, but stayed with him in the last one. And I'd never played him. So sometimes I'll use it as a reason to play someone. I'm like, I've really wanted to play this guy for a long time. Yeah, sometimes I'll be a really good player and stuff like that. But yeah, so all ABC, always, ABG, always begrudging.
I feel like the second reason you gave was the main reason for grudge matches existing, by the way. It's supposed to be a fun thing where like, I want to play this guy. Let's set it up.
I love it. But that's the thing. You're just taking advantage of something that is a really good thing, but then you're using it to your advantage. I like it. It's good. That makes total sense. Cool. Okay.
But yeah, so basically the other thing I do in there as well is if I've got a magic, like let's say it's my vampire counts, right? Magic's very important. So I start thinking about like, okay, scenarios on spells, i.e. worst case scenario, I get no Van Hells. What am I going to do? What laws are they likely to take? All of those things come into it. With my Bretonians, I'm like, okay, I've only got 2 spells. What laws am I going to take? What spell do I need here? So I start looking at those things. And so that's kind of my, I guess, cheat sheets that I create. Sometimes I won't do it for every single, army. Sometimes I'll look at it and be like, okay, it's green. With respect to the player and the army, like my army's matchup is too good against this.
Yeah.
I would have to play very poorly to probably not at least get a decent win. Or fail lots of leadership tests like I often do with my Bretts. So that also comes into it as well. But yes, that's kind of my I guess army list pre-tournament checklist. What about for you guys? Like, do you do any of that stuff?
I definitely go through them. I probably don't go to that nth degree. And I definitely have it in the last, I've only played Castle Assault in 6, and because I was just getting back into it, it was more of just a case of skim through and try and remember if it's the same as 8th, and there was, does that item do the same thing or is it not, or like that type of thing. I wasn't at any position trying to, I guess, strategically do too much. The only thing, no, we didn't know we were playing, did we, Josh? It was only that first night when we got the.
Yeah, that's right. No, it was only the day before, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then we did have that call, and we're going through, like, me and Andrew were doing some chat. Was it just, were you on the call, Josh, or was it just me and Andrew?
Oh, no, like, really, like, it was funny. I hadn't really barely contacted you guys before that tournament.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah. We were scheming.
We were scheming up. Yeah.
Changed since then.
Yeah. No, but I think in 8th when I was playing some tournaments more frequently, although never, I'm not a massive competitor, but I did like. It was more. My thing is, it's more just like, God, what does everything do? Trying to work it out, because that's. I don't play enough where it was just second nature, where you could look at a list and go, oh yeah, that does that, that does that. So that's a good point.
I'll just get the red highlighter out, and I'm just like, nope. Nope. Just looking at it, it's like, I don't want to play any of these people.
Yeah, I try to look at lists, but I don't have the concentration to really go through them all. Especially when there's like 30 or 40 or more than that lists to analyze. It's too overwhelming, man. I remember I was before the castle. I listened to your episode of War Dollies where it was like breaking down.
Oh, was that with Kendall when you?
You had Kendall on.
Yeah.
Oh, and the list was it?
It was just such a long episode. I listened to the first 2 or 3 hours. I think it went for 3.5 or something. I think because Kendall had to leave halfway through, I think, because he's just like, guys, I only had so much time. But analyzing each list one by one, it's just something that.
When do lists usually come out, ASB? Like how like is that
usually 2 weeks?
If you're going on the train, you're doing like a couple of day type thing. Is that what you get through?
Yeah, I'll try and just get through as many as I can on that ride, and then kind of isolate the ones that are the tough matchups and go okay. Then how am I going to win this? That's when I start looking at individual unit matchups, all that type of stuff. What items have they got? Like, what's going to cause me grief, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's probably the first day that I look through. I'll sort of, the first day I'll kind of browse through and go, okay, cool. Like I'm almost marking them like green, yellow, red. and then I come back to it and I go, okay, cool. And sometimes I'll change it and go, oh wait, no, I missed this. Oh, okay, that's now red, or actually no, that's now green, or that's now, and I'll swap them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, my philosophy is kind of, if I play well, I'll always try and play to put myself in a position to win and try and be aggressive. I think a lot of people try and be too defensive, but you're never going to win a tournament being defensive. You need to be aggressive. Don't be over aggressive.
Yeah, but make them think. I guess is what you're trying to put the burden on them. Yeah.
It's a bit like, I'll use a cricket analogy, right? I've since coming back to playing cricket, because I also went back to playing cricket after 10 years. And a mistake that I've found myself making, right? I'm usually batting in the top 3, is not putting enough pressure on a bowler, and all of a sudden that bowler just gets to bowl to you. Whereas if you start putting pressure on them, they start going like, oh, is he going to hit me for 4? Or is he going to hit me for 6 again? And that psychology piece then starts to come into play. And so you want to be able to put pressure on someone, and that's when they start making mistakes.
Yep.
So
I totally understand that, usually from the other end, like, because I'm far too defensive, I reckon, and that's the thing. I'm aware of it, and then it's trying to get to that point where you can, because I totally understand the psychology of it. Yeah,
casket needs to go.
Yeah, exactly.
There is a balance about how aggressive you can be. Sometimes
and differently
overplay your hand and put yourself in a bad situation as well.
But I think, and I guess when it comes to, I'll give you an example. So I played a game Friday before against this young lad named Lockie. Actually, he's probably the same age as me when I say young lad. He's more new to the game, and he'd actually beaten me in the first game. It was the first game that Brett List lost, and I think he beat me about. We didn't quite finish. It would have either been 13-7 or 14-6. I made a lot of mistakes, and he capitalized really well. So credit to him. And then we played again, and so first turn, I had one of the mistakes I'd learnt from the first game we played was I'd sort of split my army in 2, which was what I did in game 5 at Castle Assault. But in game 5 at Castle Assault, I didn't need to push because I had a lead. And so I kind of play it because he's vampire counts as well. So I kind of played it in a similar fashion, different list style and stuff as well. He's actually more defensive, and I'll come to a really key point in a second on the last checklist. But I had this move where I basically had my hippo and my peg in the center of the board, and he moved up. I wouldn't say aggressively, but probably too far up. But he also didn't leave counter charges, and he had his unit of Black Knights there with a thrall in it. And I was like, okay, calculated risk. I'm going to charge both flying characters into their front, with the idea being that I'm going to take a challenge with the peg. So when I moved them into base contact, I made sure that the peg was in base contact with his unit champion, knowing that he was going to declare a challenge with his unit champion. And then my hippo was in base contact with his unit. And I think or maybe it was the peg with the throw and the unit champion. Declares a challenge with the unit champion. I'm like, cool, I'll accept with the peg, and leaving my character. Now, the combat went horribly. I got one, I can, with that peg, he can do up to 6 wounds because he's got the Virtue of Knightly Temper. Of course, I rolled 1 hit, 1 wound. He saved it. I rolled a 1 to wound, so I didn't, actually get to make any additional hits. He then proceeded to kill said peg character with a Black Knight unit champion, and the horse did the second wound. And then he managed to ice all 3 out of 3 5-up armor saves on the hippo, and he broke the Pegasus and the hippo. But I knew that I was like, okay, there's a chance he runs me down, but there's a good chance I'm not going to break. I'm immune to psychology on the hippo, so even if the peg was to break, that's fine because the hippo is going to pin them there. But also there was no counter charges. He'd moved his other units up too far in front of them, and so to me it was an educated risk. And it also then made him start moving stuff because he was like, oh no, now the knights are there. And so it's kind of that, I saw that as an opening. Now,
even though the combat didn't go great for you, it wasn't.
It didn't.
Yeah,
no.
But it made it.
But I still, because I did that, it put pressure on him. He wasn't expecting it. And it kind of put him on the back foot. And I lost the peg. The Pegasus actually survived and rallied and passed the monster reaction test and was free to move around and ended up chaffing something later on. The hippo rallied and then ended up, cleaning stuff up later because he couldn't get to him. But my theory was, I was like, okay, those guys go in. Let's say I do 5 wounds or three or 4 wounds in the challenge. The hippo kills, and the hippo and the character combined kill, 4 or 5 knights, and I pop that unit round 1, and they just blow through, and they're in his backfield. Happy days.
Yeah.
But on the reverse, he's got no counter charges. He might break them. That's worst case scenario. I was like, yep, it's worth the risk.
Yeah.
It didn't pay off, but it pulled that unit out of position at the same time, and that was his hammer. Yeah. So I think it's things like that. And so that probably goes into the next and the final phase, which is pre-game, before every game. So the first thing that I do before each game is I ask to go through their army list. And so I'm like, cool, let's go through your list. Do you want to go through mine? I'll always just take them through, usually. Let's go through the list. The next thing I'll always do is I'm going to identify, am I the attacker or the defender? And that is such a key thing because it affects everything. It affects how I deploy. It affects how they deploy. It affects which table side I want, which table side they want, all of those things. And the key here as well is it doesn't, if you've got a really, really offensive army like Bretonnians, that doesn't mean that you're actually the attacker or the defender. No. You also want to assess, especially late tournament, okay, where am I sitting in the standings? For example, game 5 of Castle Assault, I played against that vampire list. I was the defender. I didn't need points. I didn't need to force the issue.
Yeah.
I needed a draw. He had to win. And so I was like, I'm the defender. So how am I going to play this? And then once I know that, then I'm going to go. Then I'll refer to my notes. I'll look at that stuff. Before I roll for tableside. And it kind of depends if I've identified attacker or defender. Am I the attacker or the defender? But normally, the first thing I look at is what side of the table do I not want my opponent to have before I roll for it.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's more important. I can react to having, and I'll even give myself, let's say the best side for me is the side that they don't want. I'll take the worst side for me to give them the side they don't want.
Yeah.
Obviously sometimes it marries up and it's like, okay, cool, I've got a heal. This is the side that they want. I'm going to take this side and it also is good for me, or whatever it is. But usually I'm like, I'm going to give them the side that they're
you're forcing more decisions on them, because they're in a position that they got to think about it more mistakes happen.
Yep.
I usually, whichever side of the table I happen to have set up, if I win the roll-off, I'm like, yep, don't want to move.
Yeah.
I'm just going to sit here. That's almost always what I say. Don't even look at the table.
Totally.
Which is kind of impressive because you've also had some very, very good results in tournaments this year yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
you're not staying in your deployment zone half the time anyway, Josh. It doesn't matter.
That's right. I'm across the
board. And see, I think that's the other thing too, right? If I'm the attacker, and especially if I'm using a really mobile list, why would I care about what side I'm on?
Yeah.
It's more about giving them a side they don't want.
Yeah.
And again, I might lose the roll, but
cool.
I suppose with cav buses, at least you got the frontage is a lot narrower. I found that obviously playing a few games ago, and Gomo's found that as well with his big chariot bus as well.
Yeah.
These big units, sometimes you're almost forced to pick a table side that'll give
or
you
if you
that,
know you're going to be on, if you're
gap.
attacking, you know you're probably going to the other side. You sort of look at it, go, well, if I'm suddenly over there and I'm trying to make those charges, and there's all this terrain everywhere, it's like yeah. So
yeah. And it's even like if I'm the attacker, okay, I don't want them to have a wall to defend.
Yeah.
You know, little details like that. Okay, if they got artillery, okay, is there a hill? Okay, if I win the roll, they're not getting the hill. You know, unless there's a really, bad. So it's kind of making a judgment between, okay, which is worse, for me to give them that or for me to take that away. The next one is, how many drops do you have? A lot of people don't do that. And it also comes back to list building, right? It comes back to that dual role piece. So I try and build a list for Bretonnians always that has 3 units of peasants as a minimum, because I want to be putting things down that aren't important.
Yeah,
they're not valuable.
Do you count the Treb as one of those 3 units?
What's that, sorry?
Do you count the Treb as one of those 3 units?
Or plus the Treb as well, so that's 4.
Oh, 4, yep.
Yeah. Sometimes the Treb, because of the perceived threat, it might not fit into that unit. Like, it depends on the matchup. Because I'll have games sometimes where the Treb is the second to last thing to go down, other than characters, because I'm like, okay, I want to go. I've got, and it could be from my, they're a red matchup. If they've got a demon prince or something like that, I'm like, I've got 1 shot, but I'm going to try and take it. And I'm going, this is my 1 shot, so I'm counting.
So you got to wait till that dude goes down, and then I like it.
So once I've selected the side that and then we've done the side, obviously how many drops. Another key that I've actually noticed in 6th edition is following game sequence is a big one, and so a lot of people forget that in the game sequence, and they kind of just sit down and do spells together. So the person that wins table side has to do their spells first.
Right. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Didn't know that, but yep.
Yeah. Again, it's one of those little nuanced things. I find the 6th edition rulebook really easy to read. So I've actually read it cover to cover twice this year. And I usually, that's another thing I'll do on the way to a tournament. When I'm flying to it, is I'll try and read on the plane. I try and read the 6th ed rulebook cover to cover, just to refresh myself on, little nuances and stuff. So, and look, sometimes it doesn't matter, but sometimes you're like, okay, if they take this spell, then I'm going Law of Life and I'm picking the first spell, that little 1%, you never know. And I think the other one that probably a lot of people don't do is, for example, 6th ed, you want to have all the magic cards printed, not for yourself, but for their spells.
Yeah. God, yeah.
And so that then goes, like, when it's start of your magic phase, I'm like, okay, cool. What spells have you got? Then I'm looking and I'm like, okay, that guy's got these 2. And I'm like, all right, is that within 24? No, it's not. Cool. I'll put that to the side. And I basically work out, okay, what spells can they actually realistically get off this turn?
Yeah. So you physically got their spell deck, not theirs, but like you've got your deck and their helpful ones. Yep, I like it. Yep.
Yeah. So I basically have, like, let's say they're Law of Fire. I've got their 4 fire spells. I look at it and I go, okay, what are the 4 spells? They're in range. Okay, the 3 of them are in range. Okay, I know they're going to cast this at them. I actually don't care. Go nuts, kill those archers. So I'll put that down. You can have that spell. But I don't want you to stop. I don't want you getting these 2 off. Okay. How many dispel dice am I putting towards these 2? Am I rolling for the chalice and
scroll and the dice? Yeah.
And
do you find? I guess this is getting into more specific, for 6 or whatever. But in Magic in general, like, do you find, like, generally it's like the first turn, second turn, third turn are critical, and after that it's not, or maybe there's a big one near the end, in a big combat or something. Like, it becomes. Is that what you find, or in that way you can use your scroll early, or is it?
Depends on the game.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the most important thing is not to be blasé with the spell scrolls.
Yeah.
I think we've probably all made the mistake before where you've got your scrolls and you just use it because they've only got 2 spells and you go, I'm just going to scroll it.
Yeah.
And then you're like, then it comes late game and they're like, they get something off and you're like,
a little buff thing that's just going to just.
So yeah, I think, those little nuances. I think another one, when you're deploying, if you've got a perceived matchup, then you're going into the more advanced stuff. So, okay, where is my character position? Where's their character? They've deployed this unit. Okay, when I charge them, I want to make sure my unit champion is here, because I'm going to declare a challenge, and I want to make sure that I can see their unit champions over there or wherever it is, and so even that stuff comes down and how you match up. So there's those.
Because I was thinking that when I played, it wouldn't have mattered anyway. But when I played Andrew the other day, when I charged his unit, and his BSB had that whatever fucking annoying banner is, the D6 one. It's like it's even if I'd been thinking of that at a turn level and going, okay, well, I'm going to try to get into that unit, so I should think ahead and actually make sure my guys are in the right spots. Especially in 6, it's a bit different in 8th and stuff where you can move things around a bit easier. But and old world, it sounds like it's probably be more like 8th in that regard. You probably don't have to think too much about that stuff. But I was going to ask you about that, because it feels like that is something, if you've done all that prep work, you probably know which of your units you're trying to get into their big ones. So then you can take that extra step and go, right, well, which character I'm going to put where'd they put theirs? Okay, I'll put my guy. Because I generally would never have even, most of the time you just go, yeah, that guy can go in the unit, but I don't think too much about where it is. I mean, Tomb King player, I'm more worried about the range of the dude. If I'm putting him in a unit, does he have to be on the right because he's got to be close to this catapult, or it's more like that. So
so you kind of want to then start thinking about stuff like challenges, because challenges, you can use challenges to deny your opponent attacks. Likewise, they can use it to deny your attacks. So those little nuances start then coming in, and so you want to
ideally just killing, I don't know, like killing mages and stuff. You know what I mean? Like if they're in a unit, lining up in a way that even if they challenge your other guy, that I don't know, like if you got 2 characters in there, that you're going to be able to hit their wizard as well and things like that.
Yep.
So cool. Is there any other? So is that all the main sort of pre-game?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, to be honest.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I was actually quite. I don't know if disgusted's the right word, but yeah, I was like, oh my god, I actually do all this stuff. That's next level. Until I actually wrote it all down, I was like, hi, I'm Angus, and I have a competitive problem.
Well, what about you, Andrew and Josh? Have you got any off the top of your head that we haven't sort of talked about that you tend to do?
Nah, not. Mine's real simple. It's obviously I've got a lane, so I've caught myself out too many times with vamps. I'm sure ASB probably knows this as well, where you stuff yourself up with out of 12-inch range for marches or just leadership bubbles, just things like that. I just try and make sure that everything's lined up with that synergy that I want, and especially later in the game, or it can marry up at some point. And then, like you guys are saying as well, just at least a matchup for probably turn 2/3. I don't have that foresight, which probably the better players do, of where is that unit going to be turn 5 and 6 sort of thing, or 4, 5, 6. Like I look to about turn 3 and then just wing it. That sort of.
I'll see where it goes. Yeah, I think Josh, you've mentioned that a lot though. That you tend to, what each of your units are there for and what they're going to do.
Yeah, usually. Like I probably don't have multiple. Maybe I have multiple roles, but mostly when I'm just because I feel like a lot of my processes are not that dissimilar to. I guess in some extent, except for the degree of preparation, I think, before the tournament. But like setting up a list and making sure each unit, I've got an idea of what I'm going to deploy that unit against. In general, in terms of what role it's going to have, like I'm going to have this particular block is going to be better at dealing with stubborn units, or this particular block is going to be, something I'm going to try and deploy opposite against, a large target or something like that as well. So that can sort of help me so that when I am, in a particular matchup and deploying, I do have more of a plan, I suppose, about where I'm setting up things.
sort of with the setup in mind, like, Angus, ASB, have you done this before? Because you talked a little bit about practicing, sort of laying out. I mean, you admitted you have done it, like laid out an army in deployment. Have you done any, like, with your practice games? I wrote some notes here saying, like, would there be any value in playing games like, to turn 2 or turn 3 and then re-rack and do it? You know what I mean? Like that type of like literally practice games. It's like, I'm going to try do this. If they do that, oh shit, yep, okay, well that'll go okay. Talk it out. Do it again with a different. Like, have you ever done anything like that? Do you see any value with those type of things, or the full games too important?
It's a good question. I think, to be honest, that the last 2 turns are usually the most deployment in the last 2 turns are the most 2 important phases of the game. So I always like to play it out to the last turn because, especially in a tournament scenario, you need to start thinking from sort of probably turn 3 or turn 4. I'm thinking about, okay, if there's no objective, it's just table quarters. Okay, can I force? I've got 3 turns worth of movement. I've got these. This is what I have left, and what they have left. Okay, can I win that table quarter? Can I win this table quarter? Can I win that table quarter? That unit's captured one of my banners. Is there any way I can get it back? Yeah. So I'll start moving in that regard. So I'd probably say I like to play out the whole game.
Yeah.
Mainly for that reason. I think the other thing, and I don't know, Josh, if you do similar, but as a Bretonnian player, I think where a lot of people go wrong with really aggressive armies is playing them like it's almost like you're playing poker and you lay all your cards and you go all in first turn. I think a lot of people make that mistake and they just go like, tally ho, lads. Yep. And they just, charge across the board.
Yeah.
I'm often not looking to charge until turn 3 or turn 4.
Yeah. Right. You're still playing the aggressive attacker a lot of times, but yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've got the reason I have 2 units, 10 archers and a treb is I used to nickname Bretonnian bowmen Bretonnian machine gunners because they can actually do a fair bit of damage. And again, see, if you look at a list like that, right, 2 units, 10 archers and a treb means that, to be honest, that unless you've got a shooting heavy army, I'll probably outrange you and I outcharge you. So if you're going to sit back and I know I'm the attacker, I can actually afford to sit back for 2 turns and just
just whittle some stuff down, get rid of some chaff, get some yeah.
And especially like something that a lot of people always look really puzzled that I do is I do deep deployment with Bretonnians. And so what I mean by that is I'm like, okay, I know I'm not getting first turn unless they give it to me, which then I go, okay, I'm still going to do the same thing because it's irrelevant. Is I'll actually deploy.
I love the players that do that, by the way. Just like randomly go, I'm going to screw with your head and give you first turn because I know you're a Bretonnian player. You're not used to having it.
And so what I'll actually do is I'll deploy my unit like 2 or 3 inches from the board edge. So we're talking, only 6 or 7 inches up. And it throws people because they're like, well, I was planning on you having second turn, but now I don't know what I want to do because none of my spells are in range. And now I actually have to move to you.
Yeah.
Get in range of my spells. Then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, cool. Because they've moved up, my flying characters all of a sudden go, okay, well now I can get behind you really easily. And so that's where kind of that art of deployment and the art of going, okay, it's it's not a war of attrition necessarily, but it's actually waiting for the moment to then go, okay. And then sometimes it all happens in one turn and that's game over. And I think some people, whether they're playing if you think Bretonnians or any of the real cavalry heavy or fast movement armies, so, Wood Elves, Bretonnians, High Elves if they go all cav, Empire if they go all cav, Chaos if they go all cav, I think they make a mistake by going like, okay, I need to be charging on turn 2. I very rarely am looking to charge on turn 2. It's turn 3. Like I don't want to be doing decisive charges necessarily on turn 3, because if I can deploy deep and I've got more shooting than you, then you have to actually move up to me because most magic spells are max 24-inch range.
Yeah.
So if you take first turn, you're going to move up to me. And I'm like, okay, cool. The only thing you're probably going to be able to target, unless you've moved your full range up, is my archers and my treb. And even then, I've got a 30-inch range, so I can still deploy them deep. So you've actually spent a turn moving up to get into range of your spells. You've moved your full movement. Now I can close the gap really easily. And I've almost, I'm the attacker, but I've made you feel like you are the attacker.
How do you, I like that. But with your, have you got big buses with your Brett Knights though? Like how do you move them back? Only 2. Okay. Yeah.
I'll sometimes literally have them on the board edge.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll even put them on angles.
I was going to say, like sort of sideways almost. Yeah.
Well, because especially with the errantry war, I'll actually sometimes have them facing away
like
completely.
90 degrees almost.
Or because more. If you, so if you're playing Wood Elves, for example, and you've got Glade Riders, or you're playing Goblins with, anything that's got, or Dire Wolves for vampire counts, anything that's 18-inch movement, I'm like, I know you're going to try, like you might try and bait me. And so I'll actually turn my unit sideways, or sometimes even having it turning back. And then I'll actually I'll wheel it 1 inch at a time to turn it all the way around, and then go, okay, now I'll move. And so it's just mitigating things. And I'll even deploy a unit facing backwards if I have to. And like facing backwards on my table edge. Yeah. But again, because I'm the attacker, but I want you to think you're the attacker.
Yeah.
Isn't that what you got to do with all the Wild Riders, the frenzied Wild Riders? Just keep them backwards all the time.
Same thing.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, have you guys got anything else to add on that, or I wanted to have a quick chat around just like in-game playing, like tips for fast play, like stuff like that. I know we talked about a few of them with the Magic cards. I was just wondering if there's any other things that you do ASB or any of the other guys here. Just
dice.
Tips.
Yeah, counting out your dice ahead of time. Just have it ready to roll.
I actually group. I don't know if you guys notice. A lot of times when you're playing, I start grouping mine into groups of 10, just so I know I can grab 10 dice without actually counting them. So I'll have like little pockets of them.
Or if some people are rolling to hit to wound, they're rolling 8 or 7 dice, and you can have 6 or 7 dice in your hand already, and just take out whatever number you need to then roll. Like it just cuts down on time.
Yeah, no, I like it.
I feel like what you were saying before about having the opponent's magic cards would save me so much time, because the amount of times, because my memory is pretty cooked. You tell me your spells and I'll forget them like literally as soon as you tell me. So I feel like that's a really good point. Not so well, obviously strategically to a point where all right, like you said, he's only got this range, so you could probably if he's going to be bluffing to try and get you to use some of your dispel dice and whatnot. And obviously, but on top of that, just speeding the whole game up by not having to ask these silly questions.
No, I'm a big believer in using all the, I print mine out and all that stuff, just because it's just, you're not flicking through books as much as well. I mean, obviously, the more you play, you probably know everything, so you don't actually have to look. But if someone does ask a question, you're then not having to flick it around. You've got cards there and stuff. So yeah.
Well, I was just saying, like, if I got my opponent's magic cards as well, obviously,
same.
100%. That's really good.
So I think like part of that is like I'm looking at their magic cards in their movement phase. While they're I'm watching obviously, but I'm looking and going, especially because I'm tracking their movement and going, okay, where are they moving this? All right, cool. I can put that card down because it's not going to play a part.
Yeah.
And so I already know their spells in them that they're going to try and cast, and the ones that I actually want to stop. And so I'll sometimes literally go, okay, I've got 5 dice. Or I've got 4 dice. There's only one spell I need to stop. I'm not even going to roll for the chalice because I'm not going to risk the wound. I'm only trying to stop one spell this phase. They can have everything else if they can get it off. And I've done that in their movement phase. So I'm literally sitting there going like, yep, cool. So by the time they start their magic phase, I'm like, they cast a spell. I'm like, yep, cool, you can have it. Yep, you can have it. Yep, you can have it. I'll 4 dice that one.
Yeah. Because obviously Magic phase has gone with Old World, so we don't know yet how that's all going to go. But I do find in all the other versions, at least from 3rd or 4th edition, all up to 8th, the Magic phase can drag out when you have people like me and Andrew who forget spells and don't know, and umming and ahhing over two things.
Yeah, you
really
do. You um and ah over. Oh, should throw one dice or two dice or
It doesn't fucking matter half the time. Yeah.
It's the umming and the ahhing. Another thing that I sometimes do in terms of game speed, if I'm playing, it depends on where I'm playing. If I'm on a top table, I'll actually sometimes set for the game 30-minute alarms in my phone.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And I'll have it sitting on the table. And so if a 30-minute alarm goes off and I look at them like, okay, we should be on turn 2, like end of turn 2, or we're not, or like, end of wherever we should be. And I'll be like, oh man, we need to actually speed the game up. I hate chess clocks. I will never use a chess clock. I think, like, to me, I'm like, it just ruins immersion. It ruins the, and to be honest, see, 9th Age, I struggle to finish 9th Age games because I think 9th Age is sterile and way too complex for complexity's sake, not for actual gameplay's sake. And I struggled. Like a lot of tournaments, I would finishing, I found that I hope this is one of the things I don't like about pre-measurement is that whole, I don't know, Andrew, if you found this and Josh, and I guess you all played 9th Age, but you get people that go, okay, I just want to check. I'm just going to mark this unit and I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to measure. Can I do this? Oh, I can't do that. Okay, now I actually want to check if I can do this with this unit.
Yeah.
They mark that unit and they go, okay, I'm just going to, whereas in 6th edition, like the rule we always used to play was as soon as you touch a unit, if you move it, you take your hand off, you're not allowed to move it.
Yeah, almost like,
It's a good point.
Yeah.
And so, that's one of actually my bugbears with, and I would love to see something like that implemented. If it's like, no, you're not allowed to mark a unit. Like, you're not allowed to check to see if you've got a mistake. Like, how much redundancy do you want? Like back your ability to actually move a unit, for God's sake.
Yeah, I can totally agree. I always, even with back in 8th edition, like I often found that it was really hard to get through all 6 turns in 2.5 hours. Whereas playing 6 this year, you're often done in 2 or 2.25 hours, easy. Like, it's just it's just.
Is that the size of game we're playing, or it's just that little bit less sort of stuff?
Oh, I think there's less dice rolling for sure. You don't have 2 ranks of guys fighting on each combat.
Yeah, that's
on
right.
both sides, which definitely helped.
Cuts it down.
But I think you're right. Your example of movement phase shenanigans is probably a good one too. I hadn't thought of that one actually.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of. I actually don't. I mean, obviously, I'm probably more of a proponent. Of pre-measure, just because I don't like the arguments. It's more for the charge side of things, not for the movement side. Yeah,
end up fighting over friggin'.
But I get your point, because yes, I have seen that too, where it's just like, if you're checking too much, then you're just wasting time as well, more so than just
And the thing that I found in 9th Age, like if you think it like the Masters for 9th Age, if you don't do it and your opponent does, you're at a disadvantage. And so, like, I used to actually take like a guy called Trav Cram, who he played all of 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and plays 9th Age. So Trav taught me, instead of the laser, so this is obviously for non-pre-measurement. Sorry, where you're allowed to pre-measure, is if you've got your V's, like your arc thing, and you want to have 2 of them. And then you want to have 4 30-centimeter rulers. And what you do is you put the arc with a 30-centimeter ruler next to it. And basically that 30-centimeter ruler is the zone that you want to get your unit to. And so all of a sudden I found myself in tournaments getting out an arc, putting it on my unit, then putting an arc on their unit, putting a 30-centimeter ruler either side of their arc and theirs, and going, okay, if I move here, no, can't do it. Okay, I want to move this. No, can't do it. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I've wasted 10 minutes moving that one unit. You're never going to finish games doing that. And if you don't do it,
that's a good point. Yeah. They're doing it and then you're out of position. Yeah.
So I actually think I'm going to ban that at my tournaments that I run anyway. I'm like, I don't care if people do it in Old World, you can do it, but you're not doing it at my events. It's banned. No marking. Marking is banned. Only chaos marking is allowed.
And what if you touch a unit, you've got to move it?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Like if you touch a unit, you've got to move it. If you take your hand off,
at least if you start moving it as such, yeah.
Because otherwise, it's just and it's like it's a game. You're meant to make mistakes.
Yeah.
I gotta admit, like, as in like the last year or so of Ninth Age, I haven't played since CanCon, obviously. Well, Can'tCon, but probably the year before that, I didn't see a hell of a lot of that sort of stuff going on. Even though you could pre-measure, I think I did a lot back in the day. There was a lot of that ETC vibe getting around, and
Queensland's very different.
Yeah, it could have just been like certain people were getting very funny, but even it wasn't too full on. Like it might have been like, you know, the extra minute here and there, but I never had like I never saw 5 or 10 minutes of people fluffing about. I don't know. I think like Colin and me, I mean, we were playing 6 obviously the other night, and
we're probably just not
piss farting around for
Oh yeah, God, yeah.
4 odd hours.
4 beers now. Oh crap! What time was it? 1? Oh god.
But that's almost because we didn't have a time limit. I think when you do have a time limit, if somebody is,
I finished
you just call it out. You just be like,
in Castle. So I think pretty sure
it's always when people around you start finishing games, you start going shit.
Yeah,
I better get moving. But yeah,
it's one about. I mean, it's sort of going back to your point about like dominate 2 phases. It's sort of what I liked about playing Tomb Kings in 6. It's just because like the magic is sort of dominating, but it's not like it is, but it's also simple. Like it's almost like you sort of know what you're gonna. You don't have a choice. It's just like, I have to do this one. Have to do this one. Have to do this one. Yeah. So I don't have to think about it. But plus, at some point, the opponent gets used to it by turn 3, and then they're like, okay, so this one. It just goes quicker.
I refer to the Tomb King magic phase as relentless. It is relentless. It's brutal and relentless.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I love it. Hopefully they keep it for Old World, but probably not. Because I saw the lore of Neokar or whatever in that first drop they did. So I think the incantations are gone. Oh well.
Yeah, right.
Cool. Anyway, we're getting on. Do you want to spruce your podcast and your tournaments? Like, what are you going to do? You were running some, but you don't know when you're running the next one, obviously, because with the new bug coming.
So I've kind of fallen into this lull. So you'll actually see here, I've got some dark elves sitting there on my painting table.
Yeah.
Ooh.
What is that other thing hanging up though? What is that thing? What's that blue thing? Sorry, that audio is.
That's so my dad is a retired manufacturing jeweler.
Right.
So that's
sorry, guys. It was some type of thing with a pipe coming out of it. I wasn't sure what it was. I thought it was a medical drip thing for a second. I
thought the same. Wasn't going to say anything.
No, it's actually it's a drill.
Ah, cool.
So I use it for when I'm working with metal models.
Yeah.
That I've bought and I'm stripping, and I can't. You get that when you strip a metal model,
it's got armor and stuff.
Well, it's got like paint in those little hard recesses.
Yeah.
And so I'll use like a really fine like drill bit to just basically try and get that last and
like
almost
your
polish
dentist
it.
getting the plaque off.
Yeah. The toothbrush just won't reach.
It's floss. So I've kind of gone into a bit of a lull. Like the base sizes has kind of thrown me with the painting because I'm
that's shit.
I don't want to, because I don't know what the base size is, and I'm like, I don't want to paint models when I've only got so little time, as an adult compared to what I did when I was under 20. And so I kind of haven't, I guess picked up a paintbrush in sort of 4 months probably. But
yeah, I mean, you can paint the models. You just got to base them temporarily or be prepared to alter the bases.
Yeah, but I'm doing a dark elf army, and they're not going to be supported to start with. So that's kind of where I'm like, well,
True.
I don't want to.
That's a problem.
I don't know yet.
We're going to chat about that next week. Factions, but
So I'm kind of like, okay, do I do high elves or do I do empire? I'm like, okay, but I want to wait until all the bases and everything and all that come out, and so I'm kind of waiting.
Yeah.
And so cricket season for me is kind of off season, and it kind of coincides well with tournament season as well because cricket in Queensland starts in end of September, I think it is, maybe halfway through September. and it runs through. If you make finals, it plays into March, but if you don't make finals, it goes to the end of Feb. So I'll probably run. Well, sounds like old world tournaments. I'll probably look to run, 1 or 2 next year. I usually run my tournaments down at Irresistible Force in Tanamera. So it's sort of halfway between Brisbane and the Gold Coast, purely because it's a really, really easy venue to use. So for anyone that does want to run tournaments, if you're listening, if you're in Queensland as well, they've got all the terrain you can pretty much run. The first tournament I ran was 18 players. The second one was 16. So they've got enough terrain nearly to run that whole event. I'm also lucky. I've got a mate, Daniel Stark, who hopefully travelled to an old world tournament. Or if you guys come up here, I'll introduce you to. He actually also runs tournaments. He has a games like it's like your dream setup. He runs a tournament called Patio Slaughter and another one called.
He's on 9th, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see him advertised on the 9th Australia page. Yeah.
And he also runs another one called. So he came to both of my Sick Dead tournaments. Yeah. He runs another one. He lives in Kingaroy, which is where Matthew Hayden is from, the opening batsman, the legend. And so that's about 3.5 hours from Brisbane. It's the pig capital of Australia. Pig is in not wild pigs, but the actual pork. They actually have a bacon festival there.
Oh God, and so that sounds good.
And so he runs a 2-dayer as well, which he'll probably convert over to Old World. And it's you go and stay at his house and you camp there because he's got a big acreage property. But he has this games room that has wraparound. He's only just finished it. He built it, and it's wraparound. He has every army, and it's like a wraparound display cabinet all along one wall. And he can. I think he can fit 16 tables in this thing.
Yeah, wow.
It's got a bathroom. It's got a bar. It's got everything. And his terrain is incredible.
The dream setup.
Yeah, except for I'd like to have a wine cellar in mine as well. And so, like I'll probably run those 2 events next year. Once depending, right? Maybe it'll be one next year. Probably be Old World. Probably be a 2-dayer. Maybe June, I reckon. My podcast, if you guys want to check it out, is Wait, no, that's my Instagram. So it's the War Dollies podcast. Yeah. And then my Instagram is _war_dollies. And so the first half of my podcast episodes are 9th Age, and it switches over to Sick Dead. Haven't done a Sick Dead episode in a while. Just
the last one, you and I.
The CanCon one. Yeah,
it was
4-hour one.
Yeah. That's actually where the name, marathon came from. It wasn't,
it's a detailed cast. That's all.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's
cool.
me.
That was crazy.
Yeah,
that was my first podcast, by the way. You and I doing that, and then I think 3 days later we started this whole thing.
Because I heard, when I was at Castle, so
my partner was like, "Josh, why are you spending so much time talking to people on your computer all of a sudden?"
Because I heard, I think Angus, you were talking to Alex about, because you were saying something about your podcast, and then obviously he had his older one. Well, he's got one now with Frank, and then he was on. Was he on? What was the Sydney one? That they were years ago, 8th edition.
The guys from what's his name? Fury and Kendall.
No, that's Newy ones. That's Podhammer. No, God, I can't remember what it was, but there was a few that were from the Sydney ones. They were running a few podcasts, and he was on that ages ago, and that's when I went, I should just start one with these 2. So then. Yeah. And roped Josh in and Andrew. So you inspired me. So there you go, ASB. So thanks for that.
I'm glad.
Josh had some PTSD when he first came on.
It sounds too tempting to drag on too. That's the thing. They just do. But
they do.
Yeah.
That's good. I didn't know that was your first podcast that I took your podginity and borderline pod rape.
It's never been the same since.
That's fine. It's all good. It's a good experience.
He didn't say no. So there you go.
He consented. That's the main thing.
That's right.
Anyway, mate, that's really good. Thanks for coming on. We'll obviously get you on more often next year, especially when the old world kicks off, when you got some time. And I'm assuming we'll see. Well, we won't see each other at CanCon, but
unfortunately not.
Whatever next tournament after that, we might. Be good.
Well, I figured. I was like, okay, I'm not going. Josh isn't going, and the guy that won CanCon last year is not going. Someone else can win.
Yeah, someone else. Someone else not on this call.
Definitely somebody else.
Or come second. Yeah. Someone else can come second for once.
Well, you never know. We might move up a spot or two, Andrew, with some of the tips that ASB's given us tonight. So
yeah. See if we can make the high 20s.
Yeah, that's right. Awesome, mate. No worries. Well, enjoy the rest of your week, and thanks for coming on Old World Fanatics.
Cheers,
mate. Bye.
Ciao.
Angus.
Well, that was I was trying to aim for a 90-minute chat there, but I don't know if we might have gone over that. I'm not sure.
As always.
But yeah, that was hopefully our listeners don't sit back and go, man, these, well, at least Andrew and Gom I don't know much about. Josh is pretty good, but yeah, I'm not like there's so much stuff I don't do. Like in terms of what ASB was talking about, we're prepping for games and stuff like that. I'd like to. It's generally more being a bit time poor, but yeah, just the thinking behind some of that stuff. I'm like, whoa, yeah, it's true. Level. You probably do need to do that stuff to be, to be at that level if you want to try and podium and win a lot, consistently.
Yeah. I certainly don't do that. I don't know how I ended up doing it all I have.
Yeah.
Probably all the years of suffering in 8th edition with a horrible Bretonian book. Honed my skills with that book, and then heading back into 6th edition was a whole different dynamic. There was one thing I've been thinking about actually, since we did it, because that interview for us was 24 hours ago.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about his traffic light system, his green, red, orange type thing. I must admit, I try not to think about green too much. If anything, I make more mistakes when I'm like, oh yeah, I think I've got a good match up here. I'll be more, sometimes I'll be a bit too aggressive, or sometimes I won't, I'll get a bit too relaxed, I think. You don't try as hard.
Yeah.
I almost feel like you're better off just thinking everything's either orange or red. Because that way you'll be like, okay, I've got to really try hard here and make sure that I don't make any stupid mistakes. And
totally. I think that's probably why. I remember he said, like sometimes he looks at it and then he goes, okay, what have I missed? Like you're probably going, why is this player taking this? Yeah. I mean, it's very simple. Like, when we did like Biv and some of the ETC practice stuff, not that we were in the ETC, but playing those style team tournaments, and you're sort of like, ranking lists and stuff, and having those sort of, 3 or 5 levels of sort of, it was so funny because it's like, oh yeah, this list, your list versus this, what do you think? And I'm sitting there going, like, there's no way I could look at any list and go, yeah, no, I've got that one. I'm just going to table that guy.
Yeah. I got it, guys. I got it.
Hopefully one day, but yeah.
Yeah, you need to have quite an in-depth knowledge of all army books to really be able to have a good judge of it.
Yeah. And then you've got that idea of, this will go against this will go against that. You're basically playing the trade game a lot / or maybe, in certain builds, like, if you've got like 1,000 points in 2 units that you can basically never let die, then you can play that a lot easier, I guess. Yeah. Is there anything you guys took out of it that you are gonna do that isn't going to take hours going through every list at say CanCon? Is there something though that you'd review the units so they've got a purpose, that type of thing?
I'm going to grudge some poor pleb and just tee up a 20-0.
So when Josh grudges me next match, I know what he thinks of me.
We'll just put requests in, Andrew, for CanCon. We'll randomly pick someone we've never heard of and just go, Andrew, Josh, I need to grudge that guy. And you'd be like, why are you grudging him?
Throw me a bone, Josh.
That was funny. No, it's good. It was good having him on, and I definitely learned stuff. I'm going to have to listen back to that, and I don't know. It'd be good to hopefully with the old. This is the first because I got back into wargaming and 8th was still, might have been, I don't think it was halfway over, but it was probably a third of the way in. So I've never played, and I've got, what's it called, bunny ears up, like competitive wargaming when a new edition came, like when everyone sort of gets reset back and you're learning stuff, because obviously 8th died and yes, 9th was all that, but it just, I don't know, it wasn't the same. So it's going to be interesting to see. And being in it from the beginning might make it easier to stay on top of it a bit more. You know what I mean? When you come in and it's third of the way in and everyone knows so much, it's hard to sort of catch up.
For sure. Yeah, in 8th definitely felt like that.
Yeah,
I must admit, playing 6th edition this year, because it's been such an ancient art that most people had forgotten about. It did feel a little bit like that. The meta had been forgotten about, and everyone was just sort of playing.
You couldn't look it up because half the forums and stuff are gone.
2005, mostly have been deleted.
Yeah, no, that's true.
But, yeah, you're right. It will be a whole new game, and
that'd be good. Looking forward to it. Cool. Have you got any other thoughts, Andrew, from the chat?
Nah, I just like tools, as in like tools you can bring. These are some of them.
Like laser pointers and stuff.
Is that what
you mean? Yeah.
No. Oh. As in like the points that were brought up.
Oh yes.
Figurative tools.
Yes.
Yeah, figurative. Yes. Not a hammer and chisel. So I've actually listened to similar podcasts about the speeding things up. And one thing I really got out of that, which I thought was fantastic, was the just printing out all the laws of magic and having your opponent's magic cards, just not only to speed up, but also to help you out in your judgment call when it came to dispelling. And also like he said, I think, as we're talking about the two roles. The one thing I have had trouble in the past is, when do you cut a unit? When do you at what point do you say, because I've had that like recently, obviously playing with Gomo, is my bolt thrower just keeps blowing up. But that might not be a bad thing. Obviously you're targeting it. So it's kind of one of those things, and it's at what point do you say that unit is useless?
I was thinking up that with the list that one time we played with the newer list that I did up, which I probably want to play. I don't want to just throw it out because one game's not enough, So But I was wondering, I could probably easily list at least 2 reasons for every unit that I've got in that army. The question is, are they good enough reasons?
Well, it's hard.
That's the bit where I feel like I'll fall over a bit. Like it's like, but I think the guide of saying, try and excel in 2 phases can help answer some of that as well.
It's not like the reason is, I really like how this model. I'm really proud of this paint job. So that's one role.
It's not really, but but that could be one of them as well. But no, but I don't know, for example, I think that last one I had a unit of 20 archers and 2 units of 10, and the idea being, their job is obviously spam shooting, 5 up, taking out chaff. Like I like the skelly shooting. Because Tomb Kings obviously are going to try dominate magic and shooting, I reckon, and so you would, in that case, you would use them for that. You can use them for roadblocks, and you can use them potentially to at least hold a quarter. But there's 3 units there, and they're all doing, like
that way role.
That's where you go, well, is it better to have just 2 units doing that? Is it better to have 3? So anyway,
that's true. I mean, that opens up the whole thing about redundancy and how many units you need to perform a particular role, and that's a whole other.
And then I was thinking, well, I'll bring 3 units of 10. That's cool, but if you're using magic with Tomb Kings, you're going to get more bang for your buck if you got 20 in a unit, but then you can't fire in 2 ranks anyway. So then, you go through this whole discussion. Of, I don't know what the right. There probably is never a right answer, but
Nah.
Cool.
Nah, it's some valid stuff there.
Yeah. Anyway, well, that was a pretty good episode. Hopefully, people learned some stuff.
Yeah,
and
we should probably stop rambling and
heard us try and work out what Armour bane was. But before we
failed to work out. I thought I'd have worked out. And then you correctly identified that there was a huge hole in my.
We had a bit of a win though last week because I've never brought this up yet, but we actually do have a Patreon that I set up. I don't know when it was, about 6 weeks ago. Just randomly, just did it just for the sake of it. You don't get any you don't get anything if you pay, but I just put it there. It was like $2
you get our gratitude. You get our gratitude.
You get a shout out. You get gratitude.
It's a big moment. Gratitude.
And I haven't really, I haven't been mentioning it or anything. But anyway, we've got our first Patreon, and his name's Jared. He's the guy who left us that review actually the other week. I'm pretty sure. So thank you, Jared. It goes
top bloke.
A little bit of a way to paying for the hosting. And like, I don't know, I was thinking about it. I was going, I don't think it's too much to ask just to sort of say, like, we've got, hundreds of subscribers now. And so like, if you only had 10 pay you $2 a month, that's the hosting, so like it does help. No one at all is obliged to pay anything at all. I'm not saying that, but at the same time, that's why you set Patreon up, because you're like, hey, if people spare $2, great. We'd appreciate it. But we'd, at the same time, we'd appreciate 5-star reviews and all that sort of stuff, and just sharing and just talking about Warhammer in general. And if anyone asks for a podcast, then recommend us as well. We'd really appreciate it. That's, I guess, it helps the most if you share that sort of stuff, push us on socials, on Facebook, stuff like that. So if you haven't followed us on any of those sort of channels like Facebook and Twitter, just search Fanatics, you're going to find us. But until next time, I guess, thanks for listening to us. And Josh, Andrew, thanks for another good episode. Hopefully
thank you.
We'll do the same next week with Magic.
Yeah, it was a good shout out. Really exclusive to the people that have gotten to the end of this 2.5 hour episode. That's right. The most dedicated listened
They are.
Only they get the shout out.
The cherished
his ROI for his. It's really good. I really think it's crazy. You see it like ding and you go, "What's this? Oh crap! Someone did actually." Because it's like you said, Josh. We don't even put any. We haven't told anyone because we don't expect.
We had never mentioned it. We just hit it. There's one link on the website, and that's it. There's no other. There's no other.
It just shows everyone's so thirsty for it. So really thankful, and it just keeps us motivated to keep going. And hopefully, as the old world lands, we'll keep pumping out the episodes. So cool,
awesome.
Yep. Thanks, guys. I'll chat to you during the week and chat to everyone else who hear from us next week when we go through Magic. Cheers, guys.
Ciao.